Hi guys, and welcome to Boring History Story Relaxing. Tonight you stand outside a Viking longhouse as dusk settles the sky, cooling from blue to charcoal, while the first stars blink on like timid sparks. You feel the ground firm beneath your boots-packed earth that has known many winters, and you hesitate just long enough to smell wood smoke drifting through the air. It is comforting in a slightly alarming way. You probably will not survive this, not because of danger exactly, but because your modern sense of comfort is about to be gently, but thoroughly challenged. Still, curiosity nudges you forward. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, go ahead and drop your location and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, and let yourself step closer to the doorway as the story begins to breathe around you. You duck your head and cross the threshold, and immediately the night changes texture. Outside, the air was sharp and open. Inside, it is warm, close alive. Firelight flickers along wooden beams, turning shadows into slow-moving creatures that stretch and retreat. The longhouse is longer than you expected, a single great space with a high roof supported by thick timber posts. Archaeologists generally agree that Viking longhouses were designed to house both people and animals under one roof, a practical choice in a cold climate, where shared warmth mattered more than personal space. You feel that logic immediately, because the heat wraps around you like a heavy blanket. The smell hits next. Smoke, yes, but also damp wool, cured wood, old straw, and something faintly sour that you cannot quite place. It is not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. Your nose adjusts just as the Vikings' noses once did. Trained from childhood to read these scents the way you read weather apps. Somewhere deeper in the hall, something shifts and snorts softly. You do not see it yet, but you suspect livestock, reminding you that tonight's sleep is a shared activity in more ways than one. Your eyes follow the line of the central hearth, a long fire pit running down the middle of the floor. The fire is lower now, settled into glowing embers with occasional lazy flames licking upward. This is not just for cooking or warmth. It is also the nightlight, the security system, and the heart of the household. One mainstream historical fact slips quietly into your thoughts. Viking homes rarely had chimneys as we understand them. Smoke escaped through roof vents and gaps in the thatch, coating everything in a thin layer of soot. Over time, that soot helped preserve the wood from insects and rot, an accidental but useful side effect. You move further inside your footsteps, muffled by packed earth and scattered straw. Along the walls, raised wooden platforms run the length of the hall. These are the sleeping benches. No individual beds, no mattresses neatly assigned. Just long shared spaces where bodies will soon line up like commas in a sentence that repeats every night. You imagine lowering yourself onto one later, feeling the wood beneath layers of bedding, the closeness of others on either side. For now, you simply observe, letting the scale of communal life sink in. A quirky detail drifts through your mind, one of those odd little facts that makes history feel human. In some sagas and later folklore, Vikings were said to believe that sleeping with iron objects nearby could ward off malicious spirits. A knife tucked under straw or a tool placed close at hand might not just be practical but protective. Whether that belief was widespread or exaggerated later is unclear, but the idea lingers in the firelit air, giving the night a faint edge of superstition. People move around you unhurried. No one rushes bedtime here. Children curl near parents, elders settle carefully, joints stiff from years of labour. You notice that no one seems embarrassed by the closeness. This is normal. Privacy as you understand it is not part of the emotional furniture of this space. Historians still argue whether Vikings felt a lack of privacy as a hardship, or simply never conceptualized it as something missing. Standing here, you sense the answer might be simpler than the debate. You cannot miss what you never learn to expect. The Longhouse creaks softly as the temperature drops outside. Wind brushes the walls, but inside the structure feels solid grounded. The thick walls and low openings are designed to keep heat in, not to welcome light. Night arrives early indoors and darkness is not feared so much as negotiated. Firelight creates pockets of brightness and pools of shadow, and you instinctively choose where to rest your gaze. It is soothing, this limited world bounded by wood and flame. You pause near the doorway and glance back once just to orient yourself. The outside world already feels distant, reduced to a memory of cold air and open space. Inside, time slows. The rhythm here is older than clocks guided by daylight weather and the body's quiet demands. You realize that sleep in this place will not be a solitary retreat into silence. It will be a collective sinking, a gradual dimming as the hall exhales together. As you prepare to move deeper into the Longhouse, you feel something unexpected settle over you. Not fear, not excitement, but a calm acceptance. Tonight you are part of this space. You will sleep as they slept, surrounded by warmth, sound, and the steady presence of others. The threshold is behind you now and the night has officially begun. You take a few slow steps forward, letting your eyes adjust as the Longhouse reveals its full shape. From end to end it feels less like a room and more like an enclosed street, a narrow village turned inward. The walls curve slightly, built from timber frames packed with turf and clay, and the roof arches overhead like the inside of a rib cage. This shape is not accidental. It funnels smoke upward, sheds snow, and holds warmth close. You sense how every angle has been argued with the climate and eventually won at least most of the time. The sleeping space becomes clearer as you move along the wall. Raised wooden benches run parallel to the length of the house, forming long platforms where people will lie side by side. They are not neatly separated into personal zones. There are no headboards, no footboards, no sense that this space belongs to any one individual. Instead, the benches are continuous, broken only by support posts and the occasional chest tucked underneath. You imagine the soft shuffle later bodies negotiating space with practiced ease, elbows tucked, shoulders angled, everyone fitting together like pieces that have learned their shape over years. A mainstream historical fact settles quietly into your thoughts. Archaeological finds suggest that these benches were often covered with layers of straw hay or dried grasses topped with furs or woolen blankets. This was not primitive discomfort. It was insulation. Straw-trapped air furs blocked drafts and bodies provided the rest of the heat. You realize that comfort here is collective, not individual. One person alone on a bench would be cold. Several together become a system. You pause near one of the central posts and look across the fire pit. On the opposite bench you can see subtle differences. Some areas have thicker bedding, darker furs, or carved wooden details nearby. These are not decorative choices so much as social signals. Who sleeps where matters. Higher status members of the household, perhaps the head of the family or honoured guests, sleep closer to the centre, nearer the warmth and light of the fire. Lower status members sleep toward the ends where drafts creep in more easily. No one announces this hierarchy, it is simply known. You notice how the layout encourages awareness. From almost anywhere you can see most of the hall. At night, even lying down, you would sense movement through sound and shadow. Privacy is minimal, but so is isolation. There is something quietly reassuring about that. In a world without streetlights or locks as you know them, being alone at night is not always comforting. Here, sleep happens in company, surrounded by familiar breathing and the occasional cough or murmur. A quirky detail drifts into your awareness, the kind that makes you smile softly. Some evidence and later descriptions suggest that Vikings sometimes used wooden pillows, carved blocks, or rounded logs placed under the head. To you, it sounds wildly uncomfortable. To them, it may have helped keep hair clean of insects or lice, or simply supported the neck in a way they found normal. Comfort, you realize, is learned as much as it is felt, As you walk, the floor beneath you changes slightly. Near the centre it's more compacted, darkened by years of foot traffic and ash. Close to the wall, straw thickens, crunching faintly underfoot. This is where people sit, work and sleep. The Longhouse does not sharply divide day and night spaces. Instead, everything overlaps. The place where someone repaired a tool this afternoon becomes the place where they rest tonight. That continuity feels grounding, like life itself folding back into the same grooves over and over. You slow your pace, almost unconsciously matching the rhythm of the space. There is no rush to find a spot. Sleeping positions are flexible, adjusted nightly based on who is present, who is sick, who is visiting. Historians still argue whether these arrangements were strictly enforced by custom or negotiated informally each evening. Standing here, you suspect it was a blend of both. Rules existed, but so did relationships, and those mattered just as much. The fire crackles softly, sending a brief shower of sparks upward. Light ripples across the beams, and you notice how low the roof feels compared to modern spaces. This is intentional. Lower ceilings keep heat from rising too far away. It also creates intimacy. Sound carries easily. A whisper at one end of the hall can be heard at the other if the fire is quiet enough. Later, as people settle, this will turn into a gentle wash of noise, never silent, never sharp. You imagine yourself lying down later, head near the wall, feet toward the fire. The bench would feel firm at first, the straw shifting beneath you. You would feel the warmth of others nearby, not intrusive but present, like the weight of a blanket you did not realize you needed. There is a vulnerability in this arrangement, but also trust. No locked doors between sleepers, no separate rooms to hide behind. The Longhouse itself is the protection. Another mainstream fact drifts in this one, subtle but important. Many Viking longhouses were oriented east to west. This helped manage prevailing winds and sunlight, but it also meant that morning light entered gradually, not abruptly. Waking was a slow process, guided by changes in temperature and light rather than alarms. You find yourself already anticipating that gentle return to consciousness, even though night has barely begun. As you reach the far end of the hall, you turn back and take it all in again. The shape, the benches, the fire, the people beginning to settle. It feels less like stepping into the past and more like stepping into a different set of expectations. Here, sleep is not an escape from the group. It is one of the ways the group continues to exist even in darkness. You linger there, breathing in the smoky air, listening to the low hum of life continuing around you. Soon you will choose a place to lie down. For now, you simply let the Longhouse hold you, teaching you its logic one quiet observation at a time. You drift back toward the centre of the Longhouse, drawn by the hearth like a planet easing into orbit. The fire is quieter now, no longer the lively blaze of evening cooking, but a steady bed of embers glowing red and orange. It lights faces from below, softening features and stretching shadows upward along the posts. This fire is not just warmth, it is reassurance. In a world without electric switches or nightlights, this is what keeps the dark from fully closing in. You lower yourself onto the edge of a bench near the hearth, not yet ready to lie down. The heat brushes your shins and hands just enough to be soothing without stinging. Someone nearby nudges a log with a stick, careful not to wake sparks. Fire management is an unspoken skill here. Everyone knows how much fuel to add, how little to disturb the embers so they last through the night. One well-accepted historical fact is that Viking households often kept the hearth burning continuously for long periods, sometimes for months, because relighting a fire from scratch was time-consuming and risky in damp weather. You listen as the fire responds with a soft crackle, a sound that feels ancient and deeply familiar even to you. It is a sound your nervous system seems to recognize, telling your body that it is safe to slow down. The warmth radiates outward in gentle waves, and you notice how sleeping spots closer to the hearth are already being claimed by those with quiet authority. No words are exchanged. A subtle shift of posture, a glance, and everyone understands. The light is uneven, and that matters. Faces appear and disappear as people move, half-lit, half-hidden. The fire creates a living map of the room, highlighting what needs attention and letting the rest fade. You realize that darkness here is not an enemy to be banished completely. It is something to coexist with, managed rather than eliminated. Vikings did not fear the dark in the way modern people often do. Night was a given, a condition of life rather than a threat. A quirky detail floats into your thoughts as you watch the embers glow. In Icelandic sagas written centuries later, firelight is often described as revealing truth, casting honest shadows that daylight hides. While these texts were written after the Viking Age, they may preserve older ideas. Fire was associated with hospitality, protection, and even justice. To sleep near it was not just practical but symbolically comforting. You shift slightly, feeling the bench beneath you. It's hard, yes, but layered. Straw compresses and rearranges itself under your weight. A fur is folded nearby, thick and slightly stiff, smelling faintly of animal and smoke. You imagine pulling it over yourself later, the weight pressing you gently into stillness. The fire will warm the air, but not evenly. You will feel your face and chest warm, while your back stays cool against the wall. It is a balancing act your body will learn quickly. Someone passes behind you, their shadow briefly blocking the light. You catch the sound of quiet conversation, low and unhurried. No one raises their voice. Loudness feels unnecessary here, almost rude to the approaching night. Children yawn openly, leaning into adults. An elder clears their throat and spits discreetly into the fire pit. A common practice that would horrify modern sensibilities, but here feels practical and unremarkable. Historians still argue whether Viking households used dedicated night guards, or whether the presence of the hearth itself was considered enough deterrent against danger. Sitting here, you suspect the fire played a psychological role as much as a physical one. Predators and intruders are less likely to approach light and noise. More importantly, people feel less alone when something glows steadily at the center of their shared space. The smoke thickens slightly as a log settles. It curls upward, stinging your eyes just a little. You blink, adjusting. Over time, Vikings developed a tolerance for smoky air that would send you reaching for fresh oxygen. Some skeletal remains even suggest chronic exposure affected their lungs, yet smoke also kept insects away and preserved the roof timbers. Once again, discomfort and benefit are intertwined. You glance up toward the roof vent, a dark opening where smoke escapes into the night. A faint draft brushes your face as cooler air is pulled in from outside. This circulation keeps the fire alive and the interior breathable. It also means that sleeping near the hearth is warmer but smokier, while sleeping farther away is cooler and clearer. Choosing a spot is always a compromise. A mainstream historical fact slips gently into the moment. Oil lamps were rare and expensive in Viking households. Most people relied almost entirely on the hearth for light after dark. This means that as the fire dims, the world contracts. Tasks slow, conversations fade, and eventually there is simply not enough light to do much of anything. Sleep arrives not because of exhaustion alone, but because wakefulness becomes impractical. You notice that no one seems anxious about the fire going out. There is confidence here built on experience. Embers are banked carefully, ash raked just so. Someone places a flat stone near the edge, ready to shift coals if needed. This quiet competence is comforting. Night is not chaos. It is managed, guided, held at bay by small, repeated actions. As you finally stretch out on the bench, your head angled toward the fire, you feel its presence even with your eyes half closed. Light pulses gently through your lids, a slow rhythm that mirrors breathing. It is easier to relax when there is something constant to anchor your attention. Modern nightlights do the same job, just with less romance and more plastic. You think briefly of how different this is from falling asleep alone in a silent room. Here the fire makes noise, it shifts size, occasionally pops. It tells you time is passing. It tells you you are not the only one awake even as sleep approaches. That shared awareness is oddly soothing. As your body settles, muscles loosening one by one, you understand something important. In this longhouse, the fire is not just part of the environment, it is a participant in the night. It watches over the sleepers, marks the slow hours until dawn, and holds the space together when eyes close and minds drift. You let yourself lean into that steady presence, knowing it will still be there when you wake. You ease yourself fully onto the sleeping bench, now letting your weight sink into the layers beneath you. The wood is firm, unyielding at first, but the straw compresses, slowly adjusting to your shape with a faint rustle. It reminds you of lying down on dry grass outdoors, except here the ceiling presses close above you and the warmth of the fire lingers on your skin. You're not alone on this bench, you can feel it immediately. A shoulder nearby, a foot tucked just far enough away to avoid touching the quiet negotiation of space that needs no words. As your body settles, you become aware of boundaries that are invisible but deeply understood. No ropes divide the bench. No markings tell you where one person ends and another begins. Yet everyone seems to know how far they can stretch, how much room they are entitled to claim. This knowledge is learned early, shaped by years of shared living. Personal space here is elastic, expanding and contracting, depending on need weather and who happens to be present that night. You shift slightly, testing the edge of your allotted space. The person beside you adjusts in response, not annoyed, just responsive. This is a quiet dance performed nightly. One small movement sends a ripple down the bench, each sleeper compensating until balance returns. It is surprisingly graceful. You realize that falling asleep here requires a certain trust not just in the structure or the fire, but in the people around you to respect these unwritten limits. Material evidence from excavated longhouses shows that benches were often wide enough to accommodate several people, lying side by side, sometimes up to 2 meters across. This was not accidental generosity. Wider benches allowed flexibility, making room for guests, children who wandered in their sleep, or someone ill who needed extra space. Comfort was communal, and so was inconvenience. You pull a fur closer around your shoulders. It smells of smoke and animal, a scent that would once have signalled warmth and survival, rather than something needing to be washed away. The fur is heavy, pressing you down, anchoring you. Beneath it, a woolen blanket adds scratchy warmth. You notice how your clothing bunches slightly at the waist and elbows. You're still fully dressed. That too feels strange at first, but logical. Clothes are insulation, protection, and readiness all at once. Some later accounts suggest that Vikings rarely undress completely for sleep, especially in winter. Nighttime fires could die unexpectedly, and raids, though not constant, were not unheard of. Being clothed meant being prepared. There is disagreement among researchers about how much this practice varied by region and season, but the idea of sleeping ready to rise makes sense here. Lying on the bench, you feel how exposed you would be without layers. You glance around without lifting your head. Faces are turned away toward walls or toward the fire. Eyes are closing. No one stares. Modesty operates differently here. Bodies are close, but attention is not intrusive. Children sleep curled like cats, limbs tangled without concern. An older man nearby snores softly already, the sound rhythmic and oddly comforting. You think briefly of modern beds with their rigid borders and insistence on individual ownership. This bench feels less like a possession and more like a shared resource like the fire or the roof. You do not own your sleeping space. You borrow it for the night. Tomorrow it will belong to someone else in exactly the same way. One curious detail preserved in Sega literature hints that disputes over sleeping positions could sometimes carry symbolic weight. Where someone lay might reflect favour, alliance, or insult. While these stories are dramatized, they suggest that sleeping arrangements were noticed and remembered. Even rest had social meaning. Here, though, tonight feels peaceful. No tensions ripple through the bench. The household seems settled, balanced. You adjust again this time, tucking your knees slightly, making yourself smaller. It is not discomfort that drives the movement, but instinct. Taking up less space feels polite, cooperative. The bench responds with a soft creak. Wood expands and contracts with heat and cold, and the Longhouse speaks quietly as the night deepens. Some scholars question whether people slept fully lying down or partially propped up, especially near the fire where smoke was thicker. Sitting slightly upright could reduce irritation to the lungs. As you rest your head against a folded bundle of cloth, you find yourself angled just enough to breathe more easily. Your body adapts without instruction. The sense of privacy here is subtle. You're seen but not watched, heard but not listened to closely. It is a different kind of intimacy, one that comes from shared routine rather than emotional exposure. You're anonymous in the group, and that anonymity is oddly freeing. There's no expectation to perform, to explain yourself, to be anything other than another warm body settling into the night. Outside, wind brushes the walls. Inside, the fire sighs. Somewhere down the bench, someone murmurs in their sleep a fragment of a dream escaping before dissolving into the general hum. You do not flinch. Sound is constant here, and your mind begins to treat it as background rather than interruption. You notice how the darkness thickens at the edges of the hall as the fire slowly dims. The boundaries of the space blur. Wall meets roof meets shadow. It becomes harder to tell where one surface ends and another begins. This softening makes the Longhouse feel smaller, more enclosing, like being held. As your breathing slows, you realize that the lack of sharp boundaries applies to time as well. Night does not start with a switch or end with an alarm. It seeps in gradually until you are part of it. The bench beneath you, the body around you, the fire nearby all contribute to that gentle descent. You shift one last time, finding a position that feels right. Not perfect, but workable. Perfect is not the goal here. Functional, warm and shared is enough. Your eyes close fully now, and the awareness of others fades into a sense of collective presence. You're held in place not by walls alone, but by custom habit, and the quiet agreement of everyone breathing nearby. Sleep comes not as an escape, but as a continuation. The Longhouse does not shut down for the night. It simply lowers its voice, dims its light, and waits with you until morning. Your awareness drifts downward away from the wider space of the hall and into the small, immediate world beneath your body. You notice textures first. Straw shifts softly when you breathe, tiny stalks pressing and releasing in response to your weight. It is not smooth, not plush, but it has a springiness that surprises you. The straw traps pockets of air, and those pockets hold warmth better than you expected. Over it, a layer of fur rests heavy and uneven, thicker in some places, worn thin in others from years of use. You run your fingers briefly along the edge of the fur, feeling coarse guard hairs and softer undercoat beneath. It smells faintly of animal smoke and something earthy. This scent is not accidental. Smoke helps preserve the fur, discouraging insects and mold. People here would recognize a clean sleeping cover not by fragrance, but by the absence of biting and itching. Comfort is measured differently when survival is the baseline. Archaeological finds from across Scandinavia show traces of straw hay and animal hair embedded in the soil where sleeping benches once stood. These are quiet clues, but consistent ones. They tell a story of bedding built from what was available and renewable. Straw from fields, furs from hunts, wool from sheep that shared the same roof. Nothing here is decorative. Everything earns its place through usefulness. You shift slightly, feeling how the layers respond. The straw rearranges itself, filling gaps, while the fur stays mostly where it is its weight anchoring you. The bench beneath remains firm, a reminder that softness here comes from materials, not structure. You imagine how your body would learn this surface over time, pressure points dulling, muscles adapting. After weeks or months, this would feel normal, possibly even preferable. There is an odd little detail that lingers in the historical record. In some regions, dried seaweed may have been used as bedding material, especially in coastal communities where it was abundant. When properly dried, it could be surprisingly springy and resistant to pests. The idea of sleeping on seaweed makes you smile faintly, but it also makes sense. Vikings were practical to the point of creativity. You pull the woolen blanket higher, feeling its scratchy warmth against your neck. Wool insulates even when damp, a fact well understood long before anyone explained it scientifically. Sheep's wool was one of the most valuable resources in Viking society, used for clothing sales and bedding. That blanket is not just keeping you warm, it represents hours of labour from shearing to spinning to weaving. You're wrapped in time as much as fabric. Some researchers question whether bedding quality varied significantly between households, or remained fairly uniform. Wealthier families likely had thicker furs and more wool, while poorer ones relied more heavily on straw alone. Still, even modest bedding could be effective when combined with body heat and proximity. Tonight you feel that shared warmth building, slowly radiating from those beside you. You become aware of how your clothing interacts with the bedding. Linen underlayers absorb moisture. Wool outer garments trap heat. Nothing feels wasted. Even your boots placed close by serve a purpose. They block drafts near the wall and will be warm when you slip them on in the morning. Removing them entirely would feel risky, like leaving part of yourself exposed. Your head rests on a folded bundle of cloth, perhaps spare clothing, or a small sack. It is lumpy, but workable. There are hints in written sources that some people used bags of straw or hay as pillows, while others relied on wooden headrests or simply their arms. Evidence is uneven and opinions differ, but the variety itself suggests adaptation rather than discomfort. People adjusted until something felt right enough. The warmth builds gradually, not in a sudden rush. Your body heat joins with others, creating a shared microclimate along the bench. The fur traps it, the wool spreads it, the straw holds it close. Cold air brushes your face, occasionally reminding you where the wall is, but it does not reach your core. This balance between cool and warm keeps sleep from becoming stifling. You notice that your breathing has slowed. The textures beneath you no longer demand attention. They fade into background sensation like the hum of the fire or the distant sound of wind. This is the moment bedding does its real work. Not luxury, but permission. Permission for your muscles to release, for your mind to stop monitoring every small discomfort. There is a lingering question among historians about how often bedding was replaced or refreshed. Straw would break down over time, becoming dusty or compacted. Some believe it was changed seasonally, others think it was refreshed more frequently. Sitting here, you suspect the answer depended on labour, availability, weather and need. Cleanliness was situational, not standardised. You shift once more, settling deeper. The straw sighs softly. The fur presses down. The wool warms. The bench holds steady. Nothing is perfect, but nothing hurts. That is enough. Your body seems to agree, letting go of the last small tensions it carried in with it. As your eyes close fully, the physical world simplifies. You are aware of warmth weight and the steady presence of others. Bedding here is not about isolation or indulgence. It is about creating a workable pause in a demanding life. A place to stop moving, to rest, just enough to rise again when light returns. Wrapped in straw, fur and wool, you drift towards sleep, held not by softness alone, but by layers of shared knowledge passed quietly from one night to the next. As sleep edges closer, you begin to sense patterns that go beyond comfort and warmth. Even lying still, you can tell that not everyone is equal in where they rest. The Longhouse may look communal, but it is carefully ordered. Your place on the bench carries meaning, quietly signalling who you are in relation to everyone else under this roof. No one announces these distinctions. They're absorbed over a lifetime as natural as knowing where to step without tripping in the dark. You notice that those closest to the hearth tend to be adults with authority. The head of the household lies within easy reach of the fire, where warmth is most reliable and light lingers longest. Nearby trusted kin and valued members of the group settle in. Farther toward the ends of the hall, younger people's servants or seasonal workers find their places closer to cooler air and the faint draught that creeps in through the walls. This arrangement is not cruel. It is practical, shaped by responsibility and contribution. Evidence from burial goods and household remains suggests that Viking society was structured with clear social tiers even within family units. Those distinctions did not disappear at night. They simply softened. You feel that softness now. Status influences where you lie. But once sleep takes hold, everyone breathes the same air, listens to the same fire, and dreams under the same roof. You shift slightly, aware that your movement affects those beside you. No one objects. There is an understanding that comfort must be negotiated. Still, you're careful not to stretch too far toward the center. That space belongs to someone else. Respect here is physical as much as verbal. It is expressed through restraint. An odd detail surfaces from later written traditions. In some stories, being forced to sleep near the door or at the very edge of the hall was used as an insult, a way to signal diminished status. While these accounts are dramatic, they hint at real sensitivities. Where you slept could affirm your place in the household or quietly undermine it. Even rest was political in its own small way. You think about how different this feels from choosing a bed in a modern home. Here the choice is guided by custom, not preference, and yet there is comfort in that. You do not have to decide. The decision has already been made by the structure of relationships around you. That certainty allows your mind to relax, freed from small anxieties about fairness or comparison. Some historians remain divided on how rigid these sleeping hierarchies truly were. Were they strictly enforced every night, or did they flex depending on circumstances? A sick child might be moved closer to the fire. A guest might be honoured with a warmer spot. A grieving family member might be given space. The rules existed, but they were human rules shaped by empathy as well as tradition. You feel the presence of others nearby, each settled into their familiar place. No one seems resentful. This is simply how things are done. Growing up in this environment, you would learn early where you belonged. That knowledge would follow you into adulthood, changing gradually as your role in the household changed. Advancement was not abstract. It was felt physically night after night as warmth and proximity. Your breathing deepens, and with it comes a sense of acceptance. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. The Longhouse holds everyone in a careful balance, distributing heat, light, and safety according to an order that has worked for generations. Even at rest, the household functions as a system. The fire shifts again, sending a brief pulse of warmth across your legs. Someone closer to the hearth adjusts a log, practiced and half asleep. You hear no conversation now, just the quiet soundtrack of night settling in. The hierarchy fades into the background as consciousness loosens its grip. As your thoughts slow, you realize that this arrangement does more than assign status. It weaves everyone together into a single pattern. No one is entirely separate. No one is entirely alone. Even the lowest place on the bench is still inside the circle of warmth and protection. With that realization, your body relaxes more fully. The need to monitor your surroundings eases. You trust the order of the space, the habits that have shaped it, and the people who share it with you. Sleep feels safer when it follows a known structure. You let your eyes stay closed now, no longer checking where you are in relation to others. The Longhouse has already decided that for you. All that remains is to rest within it, carried gently toward dreams by the steady ancient logic of shared shelter and shared night. Your eyes remain closed, but your awareness widens just enough to register the smaller bodies nearby. Children sleep differently here. You can tell without looking. Their breathing is lighter, uneven at times, punctuated by small sighs and sudden shifts. One presses close against an adult's side, seeking warmth without asking. Another lies sprawled across two spaces, limbs loose and unself-conscious, trusting that someone will gently move them if needed. No one scolds, no one wakes them. This closeness is expected, woven into the fabric of nightly life. Families here do not retreat into separate rooms or private corners. Everyone sleeps within reach of everyone else. Parents, children, grandparents all layered together along the benches. This arrangement is partly practical. Younger bodies lose heat faster, and sleeping near adults helps regulate temperature through the night. It is also emotional. Night can be unsettling, especially for the young, and the steady presence of familiar bodies offers reassurance more effectively than words ever could. Material remains from Longhouse sites show no evidence of separate sleeping quarters for children. This suggests that from infancy onward, young people were integrated into communal rest. Childhood here is not sheltered behind walls. It unfolds in full view, shaped by observation and imitation. Even sleep becomes a lesson in belonging. You feel a small shift beside you as a child rolls over, pressing briefly into your space before settling again. The contact is fleeting and unremarkable. No one stiffens or pulls away. Touch here is not loaded with meaning. It is simply part of sharing a space. That constant low-level contact likely shaped how people understood their bodies in relation to others, not as isolated units, but as parts of a group. There is a quiet rhythm to multi-generational sleep. Older adults tend to lie more still, conserving energy. Children move, twitch, murmur. Middle-aged bodies adjust periodically, joints stiffening, muscles easing. The bench absorbs it all. Over time, these patterns become predictable. You would learn them without thinking, knowing which sounds signal restlessness and which signal trouble. An intriguing note from later folklore suggests that elders were sometimes believed to be more vulnerable to night spirits or wandering forces. Whether this reflects actual belief or later imagination is unclear, but it may explain why older family members often slept closer to the centre of the hall, nearer the fire and surrounded by others. Protection was not only physical, it was symbolic, reinforced through proximity. You sense how care flows quietly through the darkness. A hand reaches out to pull a blanket higher over a small shoulder. Someone shifts to block a draft near the wall. These gestures are subtle, almost automatic. No one announces them. They happen because they have always happened. This is how safety is maintained when there are no locks on bedroom doors and no monitors glowing in the dark. Some historians question how restful sleep could truly be in such a crowded environment. With so many body sounds and movements, it seems like interruption would be constant. Yet anthropological studies of modern communal sleeping societies suggest the opposite. People adapt quickly. The brain learns which noises matter and which do not. Familiar sounds become lulling rather than disruptive. You feel that adaptation beginning even now, as the hall's noises blend into a single steady backdrop. A child whimpers softly in their sleep, perhaps caught in a dream. An adult murmurs a calming sound without waking fully. The moment passes. No lantern is lit. No fuss is made. Nighttime disturbances are treated as part of life, not emergencies, unless they truly escalate. This calm response likely helped children develop resilience, learning that fear could rise and fall without catastrophe. You notice how bodies arrange themselves instinctively to create pockets of warmth. Children curl inward. Elders are flanked by others. No one sleeps completely alone. Even at the edge of the bench, someone is within reach. Isolation is rare here, and perhaps intentionally avoided. In a harsh environment, connection is survival. There is ongoing uncertainty about whether Viking children slept through the night in long uninterrupted stretches, or whether segmented sleep was common. Some evidence hints that people woke periodically, especially during long winter nights. For children, these awakenings would have been cushioned by the presence of others. You imagine a small child opening their eyes, seeing firelight, hearing familiar breathing and drifting back to sleep without fully surfacing into fear. Your own breathing synchronizes with the slow rise and fall around you. The hall feels like a single organism now, each sleeper, a cell contributing warmth and motion. This sense of being part of something larger eases the edges of consciousness. You do not have to be vigilant. Others are awake enough, present enough to carry that burden with you. You think briefly of modern concerns about independence and personal space, and how different values shape sleep. Here, dependence is not weakness, it is expected. Children grow up knowing that closeness is normal, that support is always nearby. That knowledge likely followed them into adulthood, shaping how they formed bond alliances and families of their own. A faint draught brushes your face cooler now as the fire settles further. Someone closer to the hearth shifts, redistributing warmth. The system adjusts without instruction. This is what shared sleep looks like when it has been practiced for generations. It is not chaotic, it is responsive. As your thoughts soften, the presence of children nearby becomes less distinct. They blend into the general warmth and sound of the hall. Their movements no longer register as separate events. They are simply part of the night, like the fire and the wind and the creak of wood. You let yourself sink deeper into rest, held between generations, surrounded by the quiet continuity of lives overlapping in the dark. Sleep here is not solitary. It is shared, layered, and deeply human. And in that closeness there is a calm that carries you gently onward deeper into the night. Sleep does not arrive in silence. As your awareness drifts, your ears remain gently open, taking in the layered sounds of the Longhouse. Breathing is the first thing you notice, dozens of slow inhales and exhales overlapping without syncing perfectly. Some breaths whistle faintly through noses irritated by smoke. Others are deep and steady, rising from chests that have known this rhythm for decades. Together they form a soft, uneven tide that moves through the dark. Wood speaks too. The beams overhead creak as temperatures shift, contracting slightly as the night cools. It is not a sharp sound, more like a quiet complaint, a reminder that this structure is alive in its own way. The bench beneath you answers with a muted groan when someone farther down the line shifts their weight. None of it startles you. These are familiar noises, expected ones, and your mind quickly learns that they carry no threat. You hear animals nearby now more clearly than before. A cow shifts its weight in the byre area at one end of the house, hooves scraping softly against packed earth. A sheep snorts, then settles. Keeping livestock indoors during winter was common practice across much of Scandinavia. It conserved heat and protected valuable animals from predators and theft. The result was a constant low-level soundtrack of life, even after human voices faded. The smell of animals mixes with smoke and wool, creating an atmosphere that would feel overwhelming to you at first, but here it fades into background sensation. Sound works the same way. A modern bedroom strives for quiet. This space accepts noise as proof that everything is as it should be. Total silence might even feel unsettling, a sign that something has gone wrong. A curious note from later accounts suggests that sudden silence in a longhouse at night could cause alarm. If animals stopped shifting or people stopped breathing audibly, it might indicate danger, illness, or fire failure. Noise was reassurance. Lying here you understand that instinctively. Each sound confirms that the world is still turning, that the fire still glows, that others remain close. You catch a faint cough somewhere near the wall, followed by the rustle of cloth as someone adjusts. No one comments. Illness is part of life here, managed communally rather than hidden away. Sleep continues around it. You realize that being attuned to these sounds also meant being alert to changes. A different cough, a sudden cry, a sharp crash would pull the household awake quickly. Shared sleep made shared vigilance possible. There is some debate among researchers about how deeply people slept in such environments. With constant noise and light from the hearth, Sleep may have been lighter, more flexible. Instead of one long heavy plunge into unconsciousness, rest may have come in waves. You sense that pattern now. You surface drift again each time, reassured by the same familiar sounds. The fire contributes its own voice. Embers shift with a soft sigh, ash settling as a log collapses inward. Occasionally there is a quiet pop, not loud enough to wake anyone fully, just enough to remind you of its presence. This sound anchors you in time, without checking that hours are passing. Outside, wind brushes the walls, a muted pressure rather than a roar. The thick turf and timber muffle it well, turning what might be a howl into a low, distant breath. Rain, if it comes, will announce itself later with a gentle tapping on the roof, filtered through layers of thatch. For now, the night feels stable. You notice how your brain begins to categorize sounds. This one is a sleeper turning. That one is an animal settling. That creak is the roof adjusting. Each noise is logged and dismissed almost instantly. This filtering happens without effort. It is the opposite of vigilance. It is trust learned through repetition. An odd but telling detail emerges from ethnographic comparisons. In societies where communal sleeping is common, people often report feeling more rested despite more noise. The presence of others provides a sense of safety that allows the body to relax more fully. You feel that paradox here. Though there is sound all around you, your muscles are loose, your jaw unclenched. Someone farther down the hall snores not loudly but persistently. It rises and falls like a slow bellows. No one nudges them. This sound has likely been part of the night for years. It is familiar enough to fade into the background. You imagine how over time it might even become comforting a marker of continuity. There is uncertainty among scholars about whether Viking households practiced any deliberate quieting rituals at night, such as extinguishing certain fires or enforcing silence. What you observe suggests that the transition to sleep was gradual rather than managed. Noise did not stop, it softened. Activity did not end, it slowed. You become aware of your own breathing now, how it is aligned with the pace of the hall. You inhale when others inhale, exhale when others exhale, not consciously but rhythmically. This synchronization deepens your sense of belonging. You're not an observer anymore, you're part of the soundscape. The darkness thickens as the fire dims further. Sounds become more prominent as sight recedes. You hear tiny things now. The scratch of straw as someone shifts a foot. The faint clink of a metal object, perhaps a knife or tool set aside near a bench. Metal nearby is not unusual. Tools are kept close even at night. A subtle sense of alertness remains not sharp but present. You could wake if needed. You could respond. This is not the heavy isolated sleep of a locked bedroom. It is shared rest layered with readiness. In a world where danger could come from weather animals or other people, this balance made sense. As your thoughts loosen further, individual sounds blur together. The hall hums softly, a living thing, breathing and settling around you. There is no single noise to focus on anymore, just a gentle wash that carries you forward. You let go of the effort to listen. Your mind no longer tracks the hall. It trusts it. The sounds continue, but they pass through you rather than catching your attention. In this space, noise does not interrupt sleep. It supports it, holding you in a net of familiar presence. Drifting deeper now, you surrender to that shared rhythm. The Longhouse sings quietly through the night, and you rest inside its song untroubled, supported, and slowly carried toward dreams. Your breathing stays slow as another layer of the Longhouse makes itself known through scent. Smell is impossible to separate from sleep here. It drifts constantly shifting as the fire settles and the night air moves. Smoke is the strongest note, but it is not sharp. It has softened into something dry and familiar, clinging to wood-wool hair and skin. You realize that everyone here carries this scent with them always. It marks them as belonging to this place. The air feels thicker than what you're used to. Each breath carries tiny particles of ash and soot, invisible but present. Over time, lungs adapt. This is not speculation, but observation drawn from skeletal remains, where signs of chronic smoke exposure appear in many individuals. Coughing would have been common, irritation accepted. The benefits of constant fire outweighed the cost. You inhale slowly through your nose, then shift to breathing more through your mouth, instinctively adjusting. Your eyes sting just a little when the smoke curls lower than usual. You blink and wait. It passes. The roof vent draws the smoke upward again, pulling in a faint thread of cold air from outside. That coolness brushes your face and mixes with warmth, creating a layered sensation that keeps you aware without discomfort. The smell of animals becomes clearer now. It is musky, warm, alive. Not filth exactly, but presence. Livestock housed indoors during colder months provided heat and security, but they also contributed to the atmosphere in ways modern homes rarely tolerate. To the people here, this scent meant wealth food and survival. A house without animals was quieter and cleaner, but also poorer and colder. There was a faint tang of something sour beneath it all. Fermentation, perhaps. Clothing dried slowly in smoky air. Food residues clung to hands and hair. Cleanliness existed, but it was defined differently. Washing happened when possible, often with cold water and ash soap, but daily bathing was not the norm. Nighttime did not demand freshness. It demanded endurance. A small but curious observation survives in some later descriptions. Strong household scents may have helped people identify unfamiliar presence in the dark. A stranger smelled wrong. Their smoke was different. Their animals were not known. Scent acted as a quiet form of recognition, another sense woven into nighttime awareness. You turn your head slightly, finding a pocket of clearer air. The movement is minimal, careful not to disturb anyone else. The person beside you exhales deeply, their breath warm against your shoulder for a moment before drifting away. That shared air feels intimate but not uncomfortable. It simply is. There is uncertainty among historians about how often longhouses were aired out, especially in winter. Opening doors or vents meant losing heat. Evidence suggests ventilation was limited, controlled carefully. The result was an interior environment that modern standards would label unhealthy, and yet people lived, adapted, and raised families within it for generations. You think about how smell influences memory. If you grew up here, this smoky, animal-rich air would be the scent of home. Returning after a journey, it would signal safety long before you saw familiar faces. Falling asleep in it would feel grounding, like being wrapped in something known. Your mind drifts, following the rise and fall of scent as it shifts subtly. A stronger wave of smoke, a hint of damp wool, the earthy dryness of straw. These smells are layered, not overwhelming, each one familiar enough to fade into the background when nothing changes. The fire settles further and the air grows slightly cooler. Smoke thins. Breathing becomes easier. You notice how the household seems to time its rest with these changes. People settle when the fire is stable, not when it flares. Experience has taught them how the night will unfold. There is a quiet practicality in accepting these conditions. Complaining would change nothing. Adapting changes everything. Bodies learn to filter smoke. Minds learn to ignore persistent scents. Sleep comes anyway, shaped by habit more than comfort. You feel your thoughts loosening again, less interested in analysing, more willing to drift. Smell, like sound, becomes part of the background. It no longer demands attention. It simply exists, steady and unchanging. As your awareness softens, the longhouse air wraps around you completely. It is not clean. It is not fresh. But it is consistent, familiar, and alive with meaning. In this place, scent is not a warning. It is reassurance. Your breathing slows further deeper now. The air fills your lungs, warm and smoky and shared. You do not resist it anymore. You accept it as part of the night, part of the shelter, part of the rest that is carrying you gently onward towards sleep. You do not change clothes before sleeping. That becomes clear as you lie, still feeling fabric folded and pressed beneath you. Linen rests against your skin, softened by repeated washing and wear. Over it wool layers hold warmth close, thick and slightly rough, where seams meet. Nothing is removed without reason. Here clothing is not something you shed at the end of the day. It is part of you, a portable layer of shelter that stays on through the night. Belts loosen slightly. Cloaks are folded or pulled around shoulders. Sleeves are pushed down over wrists. This is not negligence or discomfort. It is intention. Nights can turn cold without warning. Fires shift. Winds change direction. Being dressed means being ready. If you had to rise suddenly, you would not fumble in the dark for garments. You would simply stand. Wool does most of the work. It insulates even when damp traps air and resists flame better than many other fabrics. Generations of experience taught people which fibres mattered most. Linen absorbed sweat. Wool preserved heat. Fur blocked drafts. These choices were not aesthetic. They were learned responses to climate and survival. You feel how the weight of your clothing grounds you. It presses you into the bench, anchoring your body so it does not feel exposed. Modern sleepwear aims for lightness. Here, heaviness is comforting. It reminds your body that it is protected on all sides. There are quiet hints in surviving accounts that people sometimes slept with small personal items tucked into their clothing. A knife, a charm, a piece of worked metal, not always for defense, sometimes for reassurance. Keeping something familiar close to the body helped ease the transition into sleep, especially during long dark winters when dreams could feel vivid and unsettling. You notice how your clothing smells like the Longhouse itself. Smoke wool, a trace of animal. These scents do not fade at night, they deepen. Fabric absorbs the day and carries it into rest. When you wake, you will still smell like this place. There is no sharp division between daytime and nighttime identity. Some nights you imagine garments would be loosened further. In warmer seasons, cloaks might be used as blankets instead of worn. In colder months, extra layers would stay firmly in place. Flexibility mattered more than rules. People adjusted to conditions rather than forcing consistency. Your sleeves bunch slightly at the elbows. It is not perfectly comfortable, but your body adapts. You shift once, then stop. Small discomforts lose their edge when nothing can be done about them. Acceptance settles in quickly. You think briefly of how modern culture treats sleep as a vulnerable state that requires protection through locks, alarms, and separation. Here, readiness replaces isolation. You are clothed, armed if necessary, surrounded by others. Sleep does not mean helplessness. It means resting within a system that can respond. As your breathing deepens, you stop noticing the individual layers. Linen, wool, fur all merge into a single sensation of warmth and pressure. Your body temperature stabilizes. Muscles loosen. The clothes that felt stiff earlier now feel familiar, almost invisible. There's a faint rustle as someone nearby adjusts their cloak. The sound blends into the background. No one minds. Everyone understands. Night is not static. It shifts and people shift with it. You imagine waking briefly later perhaps to tend the fire or respond to a sound. Being dressed would make that moment smoother, less jarring. You would not cross a cold threshold between sleep and action. You would slide between states with minimal effort. That ease matters. When life demands constant awareness, transitions must be gentle. Clothing becomes part of that gentleness, smoothing the edges between rest and readiness. Your mind drifts again, less focused now on the details of fabric and weight. They have done their job. They hold you steady, keep you warm, remind you that you belong to this space. As sleep deepens, the sensation of being clothed fades into the background just as the sounds and smells have. What remains is a sense of containment. You are wrapped, layered, protected from the night without being cut off from it. Your body relaxes fully now, trusting the warmth it carries with it. Dressed for the night, ready for the morning, you let go, sinking quietly into rest as the Longhouse breathes around you. As you drift deeper into the night, another presence makes itself known more clearly. It is not human, but it is familiar. Animals sleep nearby, close enough that you can hear them breathe shift and occasionally snort in their dreams. The sound is low and steady, a reminder that this shelter belongs to more than one species. In this place, the line between household and buyer is thin. You sense where they are without seeing them. Toward one end of the longhouse, separated only by low partitions or changes in floor-level livestock, settle into their own rhythm. Cows exhale heavily, slow and warm. Sheep rustle faintly as they adjust their weight. Sometimes there is the soft knock of a horn against wood, accidental and unremarkable. These noises blend into the night just as easily as human breathing. Keeping animals indoors during colder months was common across much of the Viking world. It conserved heat and protected valuable livestock from predators and theft. Their body warmth added to the shared climate of the longhouse, especially during harsh winters when every degree mattered. You feel that contribution now subtle, but constant, like an extra layer of insulation built from living bodies. The smell is stronger here, especially when the air shifts. It is earthy, heavy, unmistakable, yet does not feel intrusive. It feels expected. Animals were not pets in the modern sense, but they were central to daily life. Food, clothing, tools, and trade all depended on them. Sharing sleep space was simply another extension of that relationship. You imagine how children would grow up accustomed to this closeness, learning animal sounds the way other children learn lullabies. A restless cow or an uneasy sheep would be as recognizable as a sibling turning in their sleep. That familiarity likely bred attentiveness. Changes in animal behavior could signal illness weather shifts or danger long before daylight. There is an odd suggestion in some later traditions that animals were believed to sense things humans could not at night. Restlessness might be interpreted as a warning. Calm, steady breathing as reassurance. Whether this belief was widespread or more symbolic is uncertain, but lying here you understand how such ideas could take root. When animals are this close, their moods matter. You feel the bench vibrate faintly as something large settles down again. The movement is slow, heavy, and final. Silence follows deeper than before. Your body responds by relaxing further. There is comfort in knowing that the animals are settled. It means the night is stable, at least for now. Some scholars have questioned how hygienic this arrangement truly was. The answer depends on perspective. By modern standards, it would seem unsanitary. By medieval standards, it was efficient and normal. Waste was managed through layers of straw that could be replaced. Smoke helped reduce insects, cold limited bacterial growth. The system was not clean, but it was functional. You shift your head slightly, finding a spot where the air feels clearer. The animals remain nearby, but your attention drifts away from them. They become part of the background like the fire or the walls. Your brain categorizes their presence as non-threatening, allowing you to sink deeper into rest. There is a shared vulnerability in this arrangement. Animals can be unpredictable, yet trust has been built through daily interaction. These are not wild creatures. They are known individuals recognized by sound, shape, and behavior. That familiarity reduces fear. The longhouse becomes a shared refuge rather than a crowded enclosure. You imagine the warmth building slowly as night deepens, human and animal heat mingling under the roof. This collective warmth is not dramatic, but it is steady. It makes the difference between waking stiff and waking rested, between enduring winter and surviving it. Your breathing slows further. The sounds of animals fade into a low, steady presence no longer distinct. They do not interrupt your thoughts. They support them, grounding you in the reality of this place and time. As sleep takes hold more firmly, the boundaries between human and animal space blur. Everyone here is simply alive, resting, conserving energy for the next day. The longhouse shelters all of it without distinction. Wrapped in warmth, surrounded by breath and quiet movement, you let go of the last small tensions you carried. The animals nearby settle deeper into their own rest, and with them you sink gently into sleep held within a shared night. that makes room for every living thing under its roof. Sleep here bends with the seasons, and even half dreaming you feel that truth settling into your body. The night you're experiencing now carries a certain length, neither endless nor fleeting, but you sense how different it would feel at another time of year. In winter, darkness stretches on and on, pressing gently but persistently against the walls. In summer, night barely arrives at all, slipping in like a guest who does not stay long. Your body knows this without being told. It responds to light, to temperature, to habit. In the colder months, people lie down earlier, not because they're tired, but because there is little else to do once daylight fades. Firelight's precious, and fuel is not wasted on long evenings of activity. Sleep becomes a way of passing time, safely conserving energy, while the world outside waits for spring. During those long winters, rest often comes in segments. You might drift off wake briefly when the fire shifts, or someone stirs, then sleep again. This pattern feels natural rather than disruptive. The night is not something to conquer in one long stretch. It is something to move through slowly, like a landscape crossed in stages. In summer, everything changes. Light lingers late, seeping through doorways and roof openings, long past the hour when you would expect darkness. People stay awake longer, talking, working, repairing tools. When sleep finally comes, it is lighter, shallower, easier to leave. Dawn arrives early sometimes before the body feels ready. The Longhouse adjusts just as its inhabitants do. Archaeological clues from northern settlements show signs of seasonal activity patterns, with more intensive indoor use during winter months. The building itself becomes a cocoon during cold seasons, and a shelter of convenience during warmer ones. You feel that adaptability in the way the space holds you now, neither forcing sleep nor resisting it. There's a quiet strangeness to sleeping during near constant daylight. Later observers noted how people in far northern regions learned to rest even when the sky refused to darken. Cloth could be hung, eyes could be covered. More often, people simply accepted lighter sleep. You imagine lying here in summer, hearing birds outside long after midnight, feeling the world refuse to slow down completely. Your body, though, is adaptable. Over time, it would learn when to rest and when to wake based on cues other than light alone. Temperature changes the behavior of others, the state of the fire. These rhythms replace clocks and schedules. Sleep becomes flexible, responsive. You feel that flexibility now. There is no pressure to remain asleep once you wake, and no anxiety about waking too often. Rest happens when it happens. The Longhouse supports this by never becoming fully silent or fully dark. There's always enough stimulation to remain oriented, but not enough to demand action. Some uncertainty remains about how deeply seasonal rhythms shaped daily life for every household. Climate varied, latitude mattered. Coastal communities experienced different light patterns than inland ones. Still, the overall pattern holds. Life here was attuned to the sky in ways that modern indoor living rarely allows. You sense how comforting that attunement might be. Instead of fighting the night or forcing rest, people flowed with it. Winter nights became long pauses. Summer nights became brief rests between days. Neither was judged as better or worse. They simply were. As your breathing slows again, you feel the current season pressing gently around you. The Longhouse holds the night at just the right pace, not rushing it forward, not letting it drag. Your body responds by letting go of expectations about how sleep should feel. You drift surface drift again. Each time you return to awareness, the hall feels the same. Warm, present, steady. That consistency allows your mind to relax more fully, knowing it will not be startled by sudden change. Outside, the world follows its own rhythm of light and dark. Inside, you rest within a rhythm shaped by fire bodies and habit. The two are linked but not identical. The Longhouse smooths the extremes, making both endless nights and lingering days easier to endure. As sleep deepens once more, the season fades from conscious thought. Your body has accepted the conditions. It no longer asks how long the night will be. It simply rests within it, trusting that morning will arrive when it's ready. You float somewhere between waking and sleep now, and in that soft space images begin to surface. Dreams arrive more easily here, slipping in through the cracks left by firelight and shadow. They do not feel separate from the night. They feel woven into it, as if the Longhouse itself is dreaming along with you. Shapes form behind closed eyes, not sharp or cinematic, but textured and symbolic, carrying weight without explanation. Dreams matter here. Not every dream, not every fragment, but some linger into the morning and are spoken aloud. You imagine waking later and mentioning a strange image over breakfast, a river flowing backward, a figure standing where the fire should be. No one laughs it off immediately. People listen. They consider. Night visions are treated with a cautious respect, especially when they repeat or feel unusually vivid. Firelight flickers against your eyelids and the shifting glow seems to guide your thoughts. The boundary between the physical hall and the inner world thins. You half expect the post to turn into trees, the roof into sky. Sleep here is not a hard shut door. It is a curtain that moves with the air. There is evidence in surviving stories that people in this world paid close attention to what visited them in sleep. Dreams could be warnings, promises, or echoes of unresolved matters. They were not always trusted, but they were rarely dismissed outright. The night was believed to open channels that daylight kept closed. Lying here with the fire breathing steadily nearby, you understand how that belief could feel reasonable. You shift slightly and the movement pulls you closer to full awareness for a moment. Someone nearby murmurs, perhaps responding to their own dream. The sound is low, indistinct, but it carries emotion. Concern, maybe, or surprise. No one wakes them. Dreams are allowed to pass through without interruption unless they turn to fear. Some dreams would have been shaped by the environment itself. The constant presence of fire animals and shared bodies seeps into the mind. You imagine dreaming of warmth and smoke, of crowded spaces and familiar sounds. Even the architecture influences what the mind creates. High roofs, narrow halls, glowing embers and drifting shadows. The night provides the raw material. There are hints in later written accounts that certain dreams were considered especially meaningful if they occurred close to dawn. The hours just before morning were thought to be thinner, more open. Whether that belief was widespread or developed later is unclear, but the idea fits the rhythm of this place. As the fire dims and the hall quiets further, the world feels more porous. Your thoughts wander without direction now. You're not trying to remember anything. Images rise and fade on their own. A shoreline, a long journey, a familiar face seen only in profile. None of it demands interpretation. It simply exists floating gently. Sleep here is not about escape. It's about connection. Even in dreams, you're not entirely alone. Others around you are dreaming too, their minds moving through their own landscapes. Occasionally a sound leaks out, a sigh or a word, and for a moment inner worlds brush against the shared night. You feel a brief tightening in your chest, a flicker of unease. Perhaps your dream is turned. It happens. Darkness can amplify unresolved worries. But before it grows, your body registers the steady warmth around you, the sound of breathing, the faint crackle of embers. These sensory anchors pull you back from the edge. Fear has little room to grow when you're not isolated. People here likely learned early how to live with intense dreams. Long nights, close quarters, and a belief in unseen forces would all contribute to vivid inner experiences. Rather than fighting them, people integrated them into daily life. A troubling dream might lead to a small precaution the next day. A hopeful one might encourage action. Dreams became part of decision-making, not commandments, but considerations. Your breathing deepens again. The uneasy image dissolves. Another takes its place softer this time. You drift through it without resistance. The Longhouse feels like a boundary that keeps dreams from becoming overwhelming. Its solid presence reminds you where you are even as your mind wanders far. There is a gentle irony here. In a world without artificial light, people often slept closer to the night than you do now. Darkness was not pushed away. It was allowed in shaping rest and imagination alike. Dreams were not hidden behind closed bedroom doors. They were shared indirectly through sounds and stories and morning conversations. You sense the fire growing lower, the light less active. This shift changes the texture of your dreams. They become slower, less detailed, more emotional than visual. You float in feeling rather than image. Calm, familiarity, belonging. A question lingers somewhere at the edge of thought. Did people fear their dreams or did they trust them? The answer likely varied person to person, night to night. What feels clear is that dreams were not ignored. They were part of the fabric of night, just as real as straw and wool and breath. Your body relaxes fully now, surrendering to the drift. The Longhouse holds steady, a constant presence that allows your mind to wander without getting lost. Whatever your dreams bring you are anchored here, surrounded by others, protected by habit and shared shelter. As sleep deepens further, the dreams soften and blur. Images lose their edges. Feelings stretch out and fade. The night continues its quiet work, carrying you gently along deeper into rest, where thought loosens its grip and the world narrows to warmth, darkness, and the steady promise of morning. A cooler thread of air slips along the wall and brushes your cheek, thin but noticeable. You do not wake fully. Instead, your body registers the change and adjusts, pulling inward, slightly conserving warmth. Cold is never far away here. It presses gently against the Longhouse from the outside, testing every seam, every gap in the walls and roof. What surprises you is how well the structure holds. The walls around you are thick, layered with timber, turf, clay, and whatever else was available locally. They're not smooth or straight. They bulge and settle unevenly, shaped by weather and time. Those imperfections work in your favour. Air moves slowly through them rather than rushing in. The cold is softened, broken down into something manageable before it reaches your skin. You feel the fire's warmth more clearly now, not as a blaze but as a presence. Heat radiates outward in waves, strongest near the centre and fading gradually toward the edges. This gradient defines the sleeping space. Those closer to the hearth stay warmer, but breathe smokier air. Those farther away trade heat for clarity. Everyone learns where they sleep best. You imagine winter nights when frost clings to the outside of these walls, when snow piles high against the structure and muffles the world beyond. Inside the Longhouse becomes a pocket of survivable warmth, carved out of a hostile landscape. The roof slopes steeply, encouraging snow to slide off rather than collapse inward. The low doorway reduces drafts. Every design choice reflects lived experience rather than theory. Your feet feel cooler than your torso. That makes sense. They are farther from the fire and closer to the wall. You tuck them slightly, letting your knees draw up a bit. The movement is small but effective. Body heat redistributes. Comfort returns. No one taught you this explicitly. The body learns quickly when conditions demand it. Fire management plays a quiet role in this balance. The embers are banked, carefully insulated with ash so they burn slowly through the night. Someone near the hearth knows exactly how much fuel was added before sleep. Too much would risk sparks and excess smoke. Too little would mean waking cold. This knowledge is passed down through observation, not instruction manuals. There is something reassuring about how predictable the cold feels. It does not ambush you. It announces itself gently, giving you time to respond. The Longhouse mediates between your body and the environment, reducing extremes. You are aware of the winter outside, but you're not at its mercy. You think about how modern heating systems remove this awareness entirely. Temperature becomes constant, abstract. Here warmth is dynamic. It shifts through the night, reminding you that energy is finite and must be managed. That awareness encourages cooperation. People adjust their bodies rather than demanding the environment adjust for them. A faint crack sounds from the roof as wood contracts in the cooling air. It is a small noise, sharp but brief. No one stirs. The structure has made these sounds for years. They are part of its nighttime language. You recognize them now, even if you have never heard them before. There are traces in surviving buildings and excavation sites that show how seriously insulation was taken. Turf walls could be nearly a metre thick. In some regions, stones were packed into the base to add stability and block wind. These choices required labour, but the payoff came every night in warmth saved and lives preserved. You feel the presence of others nearby as they shift subtly in response to the same cooling air. Someone pulls a fur higher. Another turns slightly toward the fire. These movements ripple down the bench, each person adjusting without waking fully. It is a collective response, unspoken but coordinated. Your breathing remains slow and even. Cold sharpens awareness, but it does not disturb your rest. It keeps you lightly tethered to the physical world, preventing the kind of deep, disorienting sleep that might leave you sluggish in the morning. Here, sleep balances rest with readiness. You imagine nights when the fire did fail, when embers cooled too quickly or damp wood refused to burn. Those nights would have been remembered. Stories would have been told, lessons learned. Fire warmth and shelter were never taken for granted. They were maintained through attention and habit. There is no panic in the cold, only respect. The Longhouse does not pretend to eliminate winter. It negotiates with it, offering just enough protection to make rest possible. That negotiation continues hour by hour as temperatures dip and rise as wind shifts direction. You notice how the air near the floor feels cooler than the air near your chest. Heat rises. The bench lifts you slightly off the ground, a simple but effective strategy. Sleeping directly on the earth would drain warmth quickly. Elevation matters even by a small margin. Your body settles into stillness again. The earlier adjustment has done its work. The cold recedes to the edges of awareness, no longer demanding attention. Warmth pools around your core, steady and sufficient. In this place, protection is layered. Walls, roof, fire clothing, bedding bodies. None alone would be enough. Together they create a fragile but effective barrier against the night. You feel held within that layering now, suspended between the cold outside and the warmth within. As the night deepens, the temperature stabilizes. The Longhouse has reached its equilibrium. You trust it. Your muscles loosen further. The last traces of tension slip away. Wrapped in shared heat and solid walls, you drift deeper into sleep, aware on some quiet level that you're protected not by perfection, but by accumulated knowledge, repeated night after night, season after season, until shelter itself becomes a kind of memory you can rest inside. The night carries a quieter vulnerability now, one that settles in when bodies are fully at rest and the fire has dropped to a steady glow. Illness does not pause for sleep, and neither does injury. In the Longhouse, these things are never hidden away. They share the same air, the same warmth, the same bench. You sense it in the way someone nearby breathes a little too shallowly, or how another shifts with careful restraint, protecting a sore limb even in dreams. Here, sickness is communal knowledge. A cough is heard. A fever is felt through the heat of a body pressed too close. There are no separate rooms for recovery, no quiet isolation. Care happens in proximity. Someone notices when breathing changes. Someone else reaches out in the dark to check a forehead or adjust a blanket. Healing is woven into the night itself. You think about how often people here lived with pain. Hard labour left joints swollen and muscles strained. Old wounds lingered. Bones healed imperfectly. Sleep was not an escape from these realities, but a pause in which the body could repair itself as best it could. Warmth helped. Stillness helped. This simple act of lying down among others helped more than anything else. The fire plays a role here too. Its heat eases stiffness. Its light allows quick assessment if someone wakes in distress. You imagine someone rising quietly to tend to another bringing water, or a warm stone heated near the embers. These small acts of care happen without ceremony. They are part of nightly life. There are traces in skeletal remains that show long-term survival after serious injury. Healed fractures, signs of chronic conditions that did not immediately end a life. This suggests sustained care over time, care that could only happen in close quarters where no one was truly alone even at night. You feel the bench shift as someone nearby adjusts carefully, moving slowly so as not to jar a sore shoulder. The movement is deliberate, practiced. Pain teaches patience. It also teaches awareness. People learn to sense one another's limits, even in sleep. An unusual detail lingers in your thoughts. In some later traditions, warmth itself was considered a form of medicine. Keeping someone close to the fire and surrounded by bodies was believed to draw sickness out or prevent it from worsening. While modern understanding would frame this differently, the instinct was not wrong. Heat and rest do matter. Your own body feels heavy and calm, but you're aware of how easily that balance could tip. A sudden chill, a lingering cough, a poorly healed cut. Night magnifies these concerns, making them feel closer. Yet the shared space also softens them. You're not responsible for monitoring everything alone. Others are listening too. There is uncertainty about how medical knowledge was passed down within households. Some skills were surely learned through experience rather than formal teaching. Herbs gathered in summer, simple salves, massage, heat, time. None of these required isolation. All of them worked best when someone stayed nearby through the night. You hear a quiet groan somewhere down the hall, followed by a murmur of reassurance. The exchange is brief. It does not fully wake anyone else. Night care is gentle, minimal, focused on comfort rather than cure. The goal is to make it through until morning. You realize that sleeping together makes it harder for someone to suffer unnoticed. A feverish body radiates heat. Labored breathing disrupts the rhythm of the hall. Even in deep sleep, people respond. That constant low-level awareness may have saved lives. Your breathing remains slow and steady. You feel strong enough tonight, but the presence of others brings a quiet relief. If something were wrong, you would not face it alone. That knowledge allows your body to relax more fully. The Longhouse holds illness and health without distinction. Both are part of life. There is no shame in weakness here. Everyone has been weak before. Everyone will be again. Sleep does not erase that truth. It supports it. As the night continues, the hall grows quieter, not because suffering has vanished, but because it has been absorbed into routine. Care does not need attention to exist. It happens in the dark through touch, warmth, and presence. You drift deeper now, trusting the steady breathing around you. The Longhouse remains awake in small ways, ready to respond if needed. For now, rest is enough. Your body accepts it gratefully, letting go into sleep that is not perfect, but supported, shared, and deeply human. The night is not entirely surrendered to sleep. Somewhere within the Longhouse, someone remains awake. You do not see them clearly, but you feel their presence in the way the space holds its breath. Just a little differently. This is not anxiety. It is awareness. The household never fully switches off. It cannot afford to. Your eyes stay closed, yet part of your mind tracks subtle changes. Footsteps slow and deliberate move near the hearth. The sound is careful, practiced. Whoever is awake knows how to place their weight so the floor does not creak too loudly. They know where the light falls and where it does not. They have done this before many times. The idea of a night watch does not feel formal here. There is no rigid shift change, no announcement. Responsibility flows naturally to those most able or most needed. A younger adult might stay awake longer if elders are tired. A guest might be watched more closely, not out of suspicion, but out of duty. Hospitality includes protection. You sense how comfort is tied to this quiet vigilance. Knowing someone is awake allows others to let go more completely. Sleep deepens when the burden of watching is shared. Even if you never open your eyes, your body knows it is not alone in the dark. The fire is checked again. A log is nudged. Ashes adjusted. These movements are small, but they matter. Fire left unattended can be dangerous. Fire neglected can die. Balance must be maintained. The person awake understands this rhythm. They work with it rather than against it. Outside the walls, the world continues. Wind shifts. Animals move through the dark. In some seasons, strangers might pass nearby. Most nights, nothing happens at all. Still attention remains. The Longhouse does not rely on luck alone. You think briefly of how different this feels from locking a door and trusting in silence. Here safety comes from presence rather than barriers. Someone is listening. Someone is ready to act if needed. That readiness is quiet, not tense. The watcher pauses, standing still for a moment. You feel it the way the air seems to hold. Then they move again. Perhaps they listen for a sound outside. Perhaps they simply stretch tired muscles. Even watchfulness has its limits. No one stays fully alert forever. You drift closer to sleep again, comforted by this unseen layer of care. It is not dramatic. It does not demand gratitude. It simply exists folded into the night like another blanket. The footsteps fade. Maybe the watcher has finally rested. Maybe someone else has taken over without ceremony. You cannot tell, and you do not need to. The system works because it does not require constant attention from everyone at once. Your breathing slows further. The sense of alertness softens but does not vanish. It remains as a quiet undertone, a shared readiness that belongs to the whole household, rather than any one person. In this place, night is not something to endure alone. It is managed together hour by hour through habit and trust. Knowing that allows sleep to deepen without fear. You sink back into rest, wrapped not only in warmth and bodies, but in the assurance that the Longhouse remains awake in small, steady ways, guarding the fragile peace of the night until morning comes again. As the night settles further, you become aware of subtle shifts in how people arrange themselves after dark. These changes are not announced and not rigid, but they are felt. The Longhouse does not suddenly divide itself, yet certain patterns quietly assert themselves once the fire dims and voices fall away. Space takes on a different meaning in the dark. Men and women sleep along the same benches, often within the same family group, but there is a gentle awareness of position and proximity. You sense it in the way bodies angle slightly and how someone chooses to turn toward the wall rather than the centre, or how a cloak is pulled a bit higher. These gestures are small, habitual, and rarely questioned. They reflect shared expectations rather than strict rules. In waking hours, the Longhouse is busy and fluid. People move freely, crossing paths, working side by side. At night, movement slows and settles into familiarity. Couples tend to rest near one another, their closeness obvious even without touch. Children remain nearby. Others create a little space if it's available not from discomfort but from custom. You notice how modesty here works through behaviour rather than separation. There are no walls to hide behind, no private rooms to retreat into. Instead, privacy is maintained through mutual restraint. Eyes are turned away. Movements are careful. No one lingers in observation. Darkness helps softening outlines and reducing detail, but respect does the real work. Your body registers these boundaries without conscious thought. You know when not to shift too far, when to stay still. The knowledge feels inherited, even if it is not yours by birth. It is learned by watching, by being corrected gently over time. A hand placed lightly on an arm, a quiet cough. Signals that do not embarrass, only guide. There is a calm practicality to this arrangement. The Longhouse does not pretend that people are unaware of one another's bodies. It simply asks that awareness be handled with care. Nighttime is for rest, not attention. Desire, curiosity, and distraction are set aside until daylight brings space and clarity. You sense how this shared understanding reduces tension. When everyone knows what is expected, there is less anxiety about crossing lines. Sleep becomes easier when social rules are clear and predictable. You're not guessing how to behave. You're following a rhythm that has been practiced for generations. A faint movement nearby draws your attention briefly. Someone turns careful not to disturb their neighbour. The motion is slow, deliberate. The bench creaks softly, then settles. Nothing else changes. The night absorbs the movement without comment. You think about how different this feels from modern concerns about personal boundaries and isolation. Here, boundaries exist without walls. They are maintained through trust and repetition. People grow up understanding them as naturally as they understand where to sit or when to speak. There is uncertainty about how much these patterns varied between regions or households. Some places may have been more relaxed, others more strict. What feels clear is that shared sleep required shared understanding. Without it, tension would rise quickly in such close quarters. The fact that this system endured suggests it worked well enough for most people. Your breathing remains slow and even. The presence of others no longer registers as separate bodies. They are part of the structure of the night like posts and beams. Their stillness supports your own. As the fire dims, further shadows deepen and outlines blur. Differences between people become less visible. What remains is warmth, breath, and the quiet sense of order holding everything in place. You let your awareness fade again, trusting the shared rules that make this closeness possible. The Longhouse continues to hold its sleepers gently, each person resting within a web of habit and respect that keeps the night calm and undisturbed. Sometime deep in the night, you become aware of unfamiliar breathing nearby. It does not alarm you. It simply registers as different a rhythm that does not yet belong to the pattern you have learned over the last few hours. A guest is sleeping among you. In this place, that is not unusual. The Longhouse is not a private retreat. It is a point of connection, a shelter meant to expand and contract as people come and go. Travellers are expected. Traders, messengers, distant kin, even strangers passing through, all find space here when night falls. You sense how the household adjusts to their presence almost without effort. Someone earlier made room on the bench. Another shifted bedding. A place was found near the edge, respectful but included. Hospitality is not optional. It is woven into survival. You imagine the guest arriving earlier, boots, muddy shoulders stiff from the road. There would have been food offered, perhaps simple but warm. Water. A place near the fire to ease the cold from their bones. No interrogation. No demands for stories. Those could come later in daylight. Night is for rest first. The guest now sleeps wrapped in borrowed warmth, surrounded by unfamiliar sounds. For them, the Longhouse might feel overwhelming at first. Too many people, too much noise, too much closeness. But exhaustion smooths those edges quickly. The same shared rhythm that holds you draws them in too. There is a quiet understanding that guests are vulnerable at night. They do not know the sounds of the house yet. They do not recognize which creak means nothing and which might matter. Because of that, the household remains slightly more alert. The night watcher passes closer. Someone near the door shifts position, blocking drafts and watching the threshold. This care is not sentimental, it is practical. Today's guest could be tomorrow's ally, or at the very least a bearer of news. Treating strangers well builds reputation, and reputation travels faster than people do. In a world where roads are uncertain and storms unforgiving, a good name can be as valuable as any weapon. You sense how the presence of a guest subtly changes the energy of the room. Not tense, just attentive. Movements are slightly more deliberate, sounds slightly softer. Even in sleep, people remain aware of one another's roles. The guest is protected, but also observed not out of mistrust but responsibility. There are stories that speak of sacred obligation tied to hospitality of dire consequences for those who violated it. Whether these beliefs were deeply held or reinforced later through storytelling, their effect is clear. guests are not to be harmed. Not in word, not in deed, and certainly not in the vulnerable hours of sleep. You imagine lying down as a stranger in such a place. The relief of warmth after a long journey. The strange comfort of being surrounded by unknown bodies who nevertheless offer protection. Fear and gratitude would mix together, slowly dissolving into sleep. The bench creaks softly as the guest shifts, perhaps dreaming of the road or of home. No one reacts. Their movement is accepted as part of the night now. Inclusion happens quickly here. Once you are inside the Longhouse, you are inside its protection. There is a quiet generosity in this arrangement. Space is not abundant. Resources are finite, yet room is made. Always. Someone is willing to be a little colder, a little more cramped, so another can rest safely. That willingness keeps communities connected across distance and time. You think about how stories and news would move through these sleeping halls. A traveller might share word of a coming storm, a distant conflict, a new opportunity. The Longhouse becomes a node in a larger network, each guest carrying pieces of the outside world inside for a night or two. Sleep does not erase that potential, it preserves it. By allowing guests to rest, the household ensures that when morning comes, everyone is clearer, calmer, and better able to speak and listen. Your breathing remains slow. The presence of the guest no longer stands out. Their unfamiliar rhythm blends into the hall's collective pulse. This is how belonging begins, not with conversation, but with shared rest. Outside, the world remains dark and uncertain. Inside the Longhouse holds everyone equally resident and visitor alike. Walls do not distinguish between known and unknown. Warmth does not ask for names. As the night continues, you drift deeper into sleep, aware on some distant level that this place is larger than any one family. It is part of a web of movement and connection, sustained one night at a time by open doors, shared benches, and the quiet promise that no one will be left alone in the dark. The night has a way of revealing habits you rarely think about during the day. Small routines surface, now carried out quietly, almost without waking. You notice it when someone near the edge of the hall rises slowly, careful not to disturb the bench. Their movements are practiced. They know exactly where to step, which boards creak, which do not. The firelight barely catches them as they move a shadow passing through a darker shadow. Cleanliness here is not about freshness or scent. It is about function. You sense this in the way waste is handled discreetly, efficiently, without embarrassment. A small container near the door, a shallow trench outside. Ash used later to neutralize smell. Nothing is hidden behind closed doors, but nothing is made into a spectacle either. Nighttime tasks are completed with the same calm practicality as daytime ones. You remain still, eyes closed, but awareness lingers. Someone returns quietly, settling back onto the bench. The straw shifts, then stills. The interruption is brief, hardly registering as a break in the night. Your body barely reacts. This is part of the rhythm, not a disruption. Hands matter here. You think about how often they are washed, and the answer is simpler than you expect. Water is precious, especially when cold. Washing happens when it is useful, not habitual. Before meals, after messy work, less so before sleep. Ash, sand and cloth do much of the cleaning. Smoke does the rest. Germs are not a known concept, but experience teaches which habits keep sickness at bay. You notice how faces and hair are rarely clean by modern standards, yet no one seems uncomfortable with that. Dirt is not moralized, it is managed. The body carries traces of work weather and fire into sleep. Those traces are expected to fade or be renewed with time, not erased nightly. There is a quiet intimacy in these shared routines. No one flinches at the sound of someone shifting to relieve themselves or spitting gently near the hearth. These acts are treated with neutrality. Everyone does them. Everyone will again. Night does not require performance or concealment. You think about teeth briefly and then let the thought go. Mouths are rinsed when possible, cleaned with cloth, or chewed twigs at other times. Sweetness is rare. Decay happens but slowly. Pain is endured, treated when possible, ignored when not. The Longhouse does not judge the body for its needs. Somewhere near the door, a vessel is adjusted, its contents dealt with efficiently. The person returns, settles, and sleep closes around them again. The whole process takes less than a minute. No whispers, no apologies. The night absorbs it. You realise how different this feels from modern embarrassment around bodily needs. Here they are simply another aspect of being alive. Shared space demands tolerance. Tolerance becomes habit. Habit becomes calm. The smell shifts slightly, then stabilises. Ash neutralises sharpness. Smoke masks lingering traces. The air returns to its familiar blend. Your breathing remains slow, unbothered. You imagine waking in the morning, stepping outside and seeing the evidence of these nighttime habits already managed. Nothing left to surprise you. Nothing lingering to cause distress. Order is maintained through repetition, not rules. The Longhouse teaches its inhabitants to coexist closely without friction. That requires a certain generosity of attention, looking away when needed, remaining still when someone passes, trusting that everyone is doing their part. You feel that trust now holding you steady. You do not worry about interruption. You do not brace yourself for awkwardness. The night is predictable in its unpredictability. Things happen, they are handled, sleep resumes. As your thoughts soften, these details fade into the background. Cleanliness becomes less about action and more about balance, enough care to prevent harm, not so much that it consumes energy better spent elsewhere. Your body settles deeper into the bench. Straw no longer scratches. Wool no longer itches. Sensations blur. The Longhouse continues its quiet maintenance around you. Tasks completed without ceremony, needs met without fuss. Sleep thickens again, pulling you away from observation. What remains is a sense of ease. Nothing here is hidden. Nothing here is judged. Life continues gently, even in the dark. You drift confident that when morning comes, the night will have left no chaos behind. Only the soft imprint of shared rest routine upheld, and a space ready to hold everyone again when darkness returns. The night is far along now, and voices return softly, not in conversation, but in fragments. Someone murmurs a story half remembered. Another hums a few notes barely audible, more breath than sound. These are not performances. They are habits that surface when the day has fully loosened its grip and sleep has not yet claimed everyone entirely. Stories here do not always need an audience. They exist to be spoken, not necessarily heard. You sense an older voice nearby, low and steady, shaping familiar words in the dark. Perhaps it is a tale told countless times, worn smooth by repetition. No one interrupts, no one asks questions. The words drift over the sleepers like smoke settling where they may. Oral tradition lives in moments like this. History, memory, and imagination blur together when told at night. Stories are not recited with precision. Details shift. Emphasis changes. What matters is not accuracy, but continuity. The act of telling itself keeps something alive. You lie still, letting the cadence wash over you. Even if you cannot make out every word, the rhythm soothes. The voice rises slightly, then falls. Pauses stretch. Silence fills the gaps without urgency. This is not entertainment meant to keep you awake. It is comfort meant to ease you toward rest. You imagine children listening with half-closed eyes, absorbing images they will not fully understand for years. Heroes, journeys, loss, survival. These themes sink in, slowly shaping how the world makes sense long before logic takes hold. Nighttime stories do the work quietly. There is no single version of any story here. Each teller carries their own. What you hear tonight may differ from what is heard tomorrow. That flexibility is not a flaw. It allows stories to adapt to remain relevant as circumstances change. Memory is not fixed. It breathes. The fire responds to the voice, or perhaps it is your imagination. Embers glow brighter for a moment, then settle. Shadows shift along the walls, acting out scenes of their own. The Longhouse becomes a stage without actors, a place where words and images mingle freely. You feel your mind drifting, catching on a phrase here, an image there, a ship on dark water, a winter that lasted too long, a clever solution found just in time. These fragments slip into your own thoughts, merging with dreams already forming. Someone coughs softly. The storyteller pauses, waits, then continues. There is patience here, no rush to reach an ending. Stories do not need conclusions at night. They can trail off, leaving space for sleep to take over. There is something grounding about knowing that history is carried this way. Not written down, not stored, but spoken, remembered, reshaped. Night is a good time for that work. Minds are open, defences are down, impressions sink deeper. Your breathing slows further. The voice becomes less distinct, its words blending into tone. You no longer track meaning. You follow rhythm instead. That rhythm aligns with the fire, with the rise and fall of breath around you. Eventually the voice fades completely. Whether the teller fell asleep mid-sentence or simply chose to stop does not matter. Silence returns gently without abruptness. The story does not feel unfinished. It feels complete, enough. You carry the echo of it with you as sleep deepens. Images linger briefly, then soften. They do not demand interpretation. They are simply there like embers glowing faintly long after flames have died down. The Longhouse settles again into near stillness. Stories have done their work, easing minds away from the present and into rest. You drift with them, carried by words that require nothing from you, now leaving you free to sleep wrapped in shared memory and quiet. A gentle heaviness settles in your body, the kind that comes not just from sleepiness, but from a full evening. Your stomach feels calm, neither empty nor strained, and that quiet comfort nudges you further toward rest. The last meal of the day lingers pleasantly, its warmth still present, as if it has joined the fire in doing its part to carry you through the night. Dinner here is not elaborate, but it is sustaining. Thick stews, grains softened by long cooking bits of meat when available. Food designed to last, to release energy slowly. You imagine the pot earlier hanging over the fire steam, curling upward as people gathered with bowls. Eating would have been unhurried conversation like the meal, easing everyone from work into rest. Drink follows food, but not in excess. Something mild, slightly sour, brewed rather than fermented to strength. It takes the edge off hunger and thirst without clouding the mind too much. Enough to relax muscles, enough to slow thoughts, but not enough to dull awareness completely. Sleep here needs clarity as much as comfort. You feel how that balance works now. Your limbs are loose, your jaw unclenched. Thoughts move more slowly, less sharply. The world feels softer around the edges. This is not intoxication. It is settling. The body recognizes that the day's demands have ended. The smell of cooked grain and lingering broth mixes with smoke and wool, creating a memory that would be instantly recognizable to anyone raised in this space. Food scents fade, slowly absorbed into walls and clothing. They do not disappear overnight. They become part of the Longhouse's identity. Someone nearby shifts, perhaps digesting, perhaps half dreaming. A quiet sound escapes them, then stops. No one reacts. These small noises are common after eating when the body turns inward to process and restore. Night gives permission for that inward focus. You think briefly about how meals mark time here. Without clocks, the rhythm of eating, working and resting structures the day. The evening meal signals closure. Once it is finished, the night can begin in earnest. Sleep follows naturally, not forced, not delayed. There is comfort in that predictability. The body anticipates rest after nourishment. The mind follows. You feel that sequence playing out now as if guided by instinct rather than choice. You sense how sharing food strengthens the sense of safety that carries into sleep. Eating together affirms belonging. It reminds everyone that resources are shared, that no one goes hungry alone, that assurance lingers into the night, easing the subconscious worries that can keep sleep shallow. Your breathing deepens again. The heaviness in your limbs becomes pleasant rather than restrictive. The bench supports you fully. The warmth of others nearby reinforces the sense that all immediate needs have been met. The fire dims slightly as if responding to the same signal. The hall grows quieter, slower. Digestion and rest move hand in hand, both requiring stillness, both unfolding best without interruption. You do not think about tomorrow's work now. That will come later with light. For the moment, nourishment has done its work and your body is free to rest without urgency. Sleep gathers around you again, thicker this time, encouraged by warmth, food, and the quiet satisfaction of a day completed. You let yourself sink into it, trusting that the longhouse, the fire, and the shared rhythms of evening will carry you gently through the rest of the night. The fire has changed again. You sense it before you hear it, a subtle shift in the quality of warmth reaching your skin. Earlier it pressed outward with confidence. Now it feels quieter, more inward, as if conserving itself. Embers glow beneath a thin layer of ash, steady and patient. This is not neglect, it is intention. Someone near the hearth stirs, not fully awake, guided by habit rather than thought. A stick nudges ash aside just enough to let a faint breath of air through. A single piece of wood is added, small and dry. Too much would flare, too little would fade. The balance is delicate, and it has been learned through countless nights like this one. Fire here is never dramatic after dark. It is managed gently, almost tenderly. Sparks are discouraged. Flames are kept low. The goal is not light, but endurance. Heat that lasts until morning matters more than brightness that burns out quickly. You feel the effect almost immediately. Warmth steadies again, no longer rising or falling. The air settles. Smoke thins, then lifts toward the roof opening in a slow, predictable stream. Your body relaxes further, responding to the stability without conscious thought. The person tending the fire retreats carefully, footsteps soft practiced. They return to their place on the bench, lowering themselves with care. The straw sighs, then stills. Nothing else changes. The hall absorbs the movement and returns to its quiet rhythm. You imagine how this skill develops. Children watch adults tend the fire from an early age. They learn how wood sounds when it's dry enough, how embers look when they are close to dying, how ash insulates heat rather than smothering it. This knowledge is not written. It is absorbed through observation and repetition. The fire becomes a kind of clock. Its state tells you roughly how much of the night has passed. A brighter glow means earlier hours. A deeper, steadier ember bed signals that the night is well underway. You do not need to see it clearly to know. Your body senses the difference. There is reassurance in that constancy. The fire does not demand attention now. It does not surprise. It simply exists quietly doing its work. That reliability allows sleep to deepen without interruption. You notice how even your dreams seem steadier now, less restless. The fire's rhythm has an effect on the mind as much as the body. Flickering light earlier may have stirred imagination. This steadier glow encourages stillness. Outside, the night continues to cool. Inside, the longhouse holds its warmth anchored by the hearth. The structure works with the fire, not against it. Walls retain heat. Roof vents regulate air. Everything contributes to keeping the balance intact. Your breathing slows again, deep and even. The earlier awareness of tending and adjustment fades. You no longer track the fire consciously. You trust it just as you trust the walls and the people around you. The night stretches ahead, but it does not feel long. It feels contained, managed, safe enough to let go completely. As sleep deepens, the fire remains quiet and watchful, carrying warmth forward into the hours you will not remember. It will still be there when you wake reduced, but alive, ready to be coaxed back into flame as the day begins again. You drift further now, held by that certainty, sinking into rest that does not require vigilance, because something else nearby has taken on that role for you. The darkness beyond the walls presses closer now, not physically, but in the imagination. Even as you sleep, part of your mind remains aware of what lies outside the circle of firelight. The Longhouse is a boundary, a line drawn between safety and the unknown. Beyond it, the night belongs to other things. Wind animals, shifting shadows, and stories that have been told too many times to forget. You feel that awareness as a faint tension that never quite sharpens into fear. It's the same feeling you get when walking through a forest at dusk, knowing you are not alone even if you cannot see anyone else. Here that feeling is softened by walls and warmth, but it does not disappear entirely. Darkness is respected. It is not treated as empty. Someone nearby murmurs in their sleep, perhaps responding to a dream shaped by those same thoughts. A figure at the edge of the fire, a sound just beyond the door. Dreams borrow freely from belief, and belief here is thick with unseen presences. The night is not neutral, it has character. You think about how stories of spirits, wanderers, and hidden beings would feel especially real in a place like this. When the world outside is truly dark, when there are no distant lights or constant noise, imagination fills the gaps. Every sound has potential meaning, every silence can feel deliberate. Yet fear does not take hold. The Longhouse counters it quietly. The fire glows, bodies breathe, the roof holds. These are tangible reassurances stronger than any story whispered in daylight. The unknown remains outside. Inside the known gathers close. You sense how belief and architecture work together. The Longhouse is not just a shelter from weather. It is a defense against the psychological weight of the night. Thick walls, low doors, and shared space all reinforce the idea that whatever waits outside does not belong inside. Children here would grow up hearing warnings about wandering too far after dark, about places best avoided at night, about times when the boundary between worlds feels thinner. These lessons would shape behavior, encouraging caution rather than panic. Night is not evil, but it demands respect. You feel a brief flicker of unease, perhaps triggered by a sound you cannot immediately place. Then you identify it. Wind shifting direction, a branch brushing against the outer wall. Recognition dissolves tension. Familiarity restores calm. The fire responds with a quiet crackle as if acknowledging the moment. Light shifts slightly, shadows rearranging themselves into less threatening shapes. Your body relaxes again, trusting the pattern. There is comfort in shared belief, even when it includes fear. Knowing that others sense the same things you do reduces their power. You're not imagining danger alone. You're part of a group that understands the night and has learned how to live with it. Sleep deepens again. The thoughts of what lies beyond the wall soften, losing their edges. They drift into dreams where they can be explored safely without consequence. The Longhouse remains steady, a solid answer to the questions the night raises. Whatever exists outside it has not crossed the threshold. It will not tonight. Held within warmth and familiarity, you'll let the darkness outside remain where it belongs. Your mind settles, your body rests. The night continues, watched, respected, and contained while you drift quietly onward through sleep. A change in sound draws your awareness gently upward from deeper sleep. It is not sudden or sharp, it is rhythmic. A soft tapping, irregular but persistent, reaches the roof above you. Rain has begun, or perhaps sleet, the kind that cannot decide what it wants to be. Each drop meets the thatch and turf overhead, and loses its urgency, spreading into a dull, comforting patter. The roof answers with its own language. Thatch absorbs much of the impact, turning rain into a muted whisper rather than a drum. Turf adds weight and insulation, pressing everything downward into stillness. You feel rather than hear how well it works. No drip reaches you. No cold trickle sneaks in. The sound remains above, contained, distant enough to be soothing. Wind joins in, sliding along the length of the Longhouse, testing its edges. The walls hold. They always do. You feel a faint pressure change as air moves across the structure, but nothing more. Inside, the warmth remains stable, protected by layers built for exactly this moment. Rain on the roof has a different effect than rain outside. It does not signal discomfort or inconvenience, it signals shelter. Each drop confirms that you are where you should be, dry and held while the weather does its work elsewhere. Your body relaxes further, responding to that reassurance. The fire remains steady, its glow unchanged. Moisture outside does not threaten it here. Smoke continues to drift upward, pulled by the same vent that now releases a hint of damp night air. The smells shift slightly. Wet earth mixes faintly with smoke and wool, creating a deeper, richer scent. Someone nearby exhales slowly, settling more fully into sleep. The sound of rain seems to encourage stillness. Movements become rarer. Even dreams feel quieter, less urgent. You imagine what it would be like to be caught in this weather without shelter. Cold soaking through clothing, wind biting at skin. That thought fades quickly. The Longhouse does not invite comparison. It answers it. Rain continues steady now, creating a gentle ceiling of sound. It fills the silence without demanding attention. Your mind no longer tries to identify individual drops. It accepts the pattern as a whole. The roof creaks once, adjusting to the added weight. Then it settles again. This structure has carried snow, rain, and wind through many seasons. Tonight is just another test it passes without drama. Your breathing syncs with the rhythm overhead. Inhale, exhale, drop, drop. The pattern lulls you, smoothing thoughts into something simpler. Outside paths turn slick, fires hiss, darkness deepens. Inside, nothing changes that matters. Warmth holds, bodies rest. The night moves on without disturbing you. The rain becomes part of the background, just another layer added to the Longhouse song. It does not wake you. It does not worry you. It reassures you, reminding you that shelter works best when it is needed most. You drift deeper now, wrapped in sound and warmth, trusting the roof above you to keep doing what it was built to do. The weather can have the rest of the world. You're already where you need to be. You surface slowly from sleep, not all at once, but in layers. Awareness returns before thought. A sense of position, weight, warmth, then sound. Someone shifts nearby the bench, responding with a familiar creak. The fire murmurs softly, lower now, but still alive. Nothing feels wrong. You have simply reached one of those natural pauses in the night. Waking like this does not feel like failure. It feels expected. Your eyes remain closed because there is no need to open them. The darkness has not changed enough to offer new information. Instead, you listen. You take inventory without effort, checking the world the way a hand checks the edge of a table in the dark. Your body feels heavy, relaxed, but not stiff. Sleep has not locked you into stillness. You stretch just enough to release a shoulder, then stop. The movement sends a small ripple down the bench. Others adjust instinctively, then settle again. No one sighs, no one complains. This is part of the shared rhythm. Broken sleep is normal here. The night is long, especially in colder seasons, and the body does not expect to disappear into it for hours at a time. Instead, rest comes in waves. Drift, wake, drift again. Each phase serves its purpose. You do not check the time. There is nothing to check it against. You notice your mouth feels dry. Smoke, warmth, breathing through the night all contribute. Nearby, someone else swallows, clears their throat softly. These small sounds confirm you're not alone in this half-awake space. Others are floating here too, between rest and alertness. You consider rolling onto your other side. The thought is enough. You move slowly, carefully, redistributing your weight. Straw shifts. Wool slides. A knee finds a new angle. The bench settles. Comfort returns. No one fully wakes. The system absorbs the change. Your mind wanders briefly, not to plans or worries, but to impressions. The sound of rain earlier, the weight of clothing, the smell of smoke. These details drift through without forming a narrative. You do not try to hold them. They pass. Somewhere near the fire, someone sits up slightly. You hear the faint scrape of wood on earth, then stillness. Perhaps they're checking the embers. Perhaps they are simply repositioning. The action does not escalate. The night remains calm. You think about how different this waking feels from jolting awake to silence. Here the world never disappears completely. There is always enough presence to keep you oriented. That makes these moments of wakefulness gentle rather than jarring. Your eyes open briefly, the hall is dim shapes barely distinguishable. The roof arches above like a shadowed sky. Posts stand quietly familiar silhouettes. The fire glows faintly, a low red eye watching over everything. You close your eyes again, seeing adds nothing. You listen to your own breathing, then stop listening as it blends back into the whole. The whole breathes together. Even the animals at the far end shift faintly, then still. The night remains intact. There is no urge to do anything. No need to check on anyone. No sense of urgency. This waking is not a call to action. It's simply a bend in the road of sleep, a place where the body stretches, reorients, then continues on. Your thoughts soften again. The edges blur. You feel yourself drifting, but not all the way yet. There is a sweetness to this in-between state. Warm, quiet, suspended. A memory surfaces not yours, but one you imagine belonging here. Someone waking like this night after night, year after year. The same bench, the same fire, the same sounds. These moments accumulate into familiarity so deep it becomes invisible. Waking in the night stops feeling like interruption and starts feeling like part of rest itself. You shift your hand, tucking it closer to your chest. The movement feels final, like settling a blanket just right. Your body understands that this is where it will stay for a while. The fire sighs softly. A coal collapses inward. The sound is gentle, almost affectionate. It reassures you without pulling you fully awake. Your breathing slows again. The half-thoughts loosen their grip. Images blur before they fully form. You're no longer thinking about the night. You're inside it. Sleep returns without effort, not as a plunge, but as a gradual easing. Awareness dims, sound softens. Sensation narrows to warmth and weight and breath. The moment of waking fades, leaving no trace behind. The Longhouse continues to hold you, and you slip back into rest, carried forward by the same steady rhythm that will guide you through the rest of the night. Light reaches you before sound does. It is not bright, not clear, but it is different from the darkness that held the night together. Even with your eyes closed, you sense it. A thinning, a soft grey pressure behind your lids. Morning does not arrive all at once here. It seeps in quietly, testing whether the night is ready to let go. The air feels cooler, now sharper at the edges. The fire has burned low, its warmth no longer radiating outward with confidence. Instead, it offers a final, steady glow enough to promise that it can be coaxed back to life. Someone will do that soon, not yet. For now, the hall lingers in this in-between state, neither fully asleep nor fully awake. You hear it then. You shift in posture somewhere near the centre, the soft scrape of a boot being nudged into place. A throat cleared not to speak but to prepare. Morning movements are slower than nighttime ones. They carry intention without urgency. The roof above you looks different now. Shadows flatten. Beams emerge from the dark, their edges clearer. The space feels larger in daylight, even when light is scarce. You open your eyes briefly and see breath rising faintly in the cool air. It fogs, then disappears. No one speaks yet. There is no signal to begin the day. People wake according to their own rhythm, guided by light and habit rather than command. One person sits up, rubbing their face. Another stretches carefully, mindful of those still resting nearby. You shift onto your back and feel the bench beneath you again, firmer now that your body has cooled slightly. Straw feels rougher in the morning, wool less forgiving. Sleep softened those sensations. Wakefulness sharpens them again. The door at one end of the hall creaks as it is opened just a fraction. Cold air slips in fresh and unmistakable. It smells of wet earth and grass. Someone steps outside briefly, perhaps to check the weather, perhaps to begin the quiet work of morning. The door closes again, sealing warmth back inside. The animals respond to the light. A low sound from the far end of the hall, hooves shifting. A sense of readiness passes through them too. Day brings feeding, movement, routine. You feel your body waking fully now, not reluctantly but steadily. There is stiffness in your shoulders, a dull ache in your back. It is familiar, expected. You roll your neck slowly, careful not to disturb anyone still resting. The fire stirs, ashes brushed aside. A dry piece of wood is added. The glow brightens just enough to change the colour of the room. Orange returns, faces become clearer. The day begins without announcement. Morning here is communal in the same way night is. No one retreats to prepare alone. Everyone wakes into the same space, sharing the same air and light. Privacy will come later in movement and task, not in walls. You sit up now, letting the blanket fall from your shoulders. The air feels cold against your skin, but it wakes you fully. You slip your boots on without standing grateful, they are already warm. Around you, others rise. Some speak softly now, exchanging simple words. Nothing important yet, just acknowledgements, presence. The night is over. You glance once more at the bench where you slept. It already feels less like a bed and more like a piece of furniture again. Straw will be straightened, furs folded. The space will shift from rest to work without pause. Morning light strengthens slightly. Not enough to dazzle, just enough to signal that the day has begun. Outside, the world waits. You take a breath, steady and clear. Sleep has done its work. Not perfectly, not deeply, but sufficiently. Your body's ready to move again. The Longhouse exhales as one, night releases its hold, day steps quietly inside. You rise with everyone else, not because you are told to, but because the room itself has shifted into motion. The Longhouse does not wake in stages so much as in a slow collective stretch. One person stands, another follows. Soon the bench that held so many bodies through the night begins to empty its purpose, changing without ceremony. There is no rush. Morning here does not demand speed. It asks for steadiness. You step carefully, easing weight onto your feet, letting blood return to places that have been still for hours. The packed earth floor feels cool, firm grounding. You adjust your clothing, smoothing wool where it has creased, pulling fabric into familiar places. Dressing is minimal. You are never undressed. Around you others do the same. Movements are efficient, practiced, almost quiet enough to count as thoughtless. Someone folds a fur and sets it aside. Another shakes straw back into place, redistributing it, so the bench is ready for the next night. Sleep leaves no permanent mark here. It is folded away along with everything else. The fire brightens as more wood is added. Flames stretch upward, eager now, responding to morning air and attention. Light fills the hall more fully, revealing faces properly, for the first time since dusk. Eyes meet. Nods are exchanged. Words are still few, but they come more easily now. Children are awake too, rubbing eyes, clinging briefly to adults before drifting toward small tasks. No one separates them off. Morning begins together, just as night ended together. That continuity feels important, even if no one articulates it. You notice how quickly the Longhouse transforms. What was a sleeping hall becomes workspace again. Tools appear from chests. Bowls are set out. The air shifts as smoke thickens slightly with the revived fire. The night is already receding, its traces fading with each practical action. There is something reassuring about this shared beginning. No one wakes alone. No one starts the day unseen. The presence of others anchors you, reminds you where you are and what is expected. The day does not arrive as a surprise. It arrives as a continuation. You stretch your arms once more, feeling stiffness ease as warmth returns. Muscles remember their work. The body reorients itself toward movement and effort. Rest has done what it can. Now it steps aside. Voices grow a little louder, but still measured. Plans are mentioned, Tasks divided, nothing dramatic, just the steady unfolding of another day. Sleep has prepared everyone, equally smoothing edges, restoring just enough strength to begin again. You glance back at the bench one last time. It looks ordinary now, stripped of bodies and warmth. Soon it will hold people sitting, working, resting briefly between tasks. Tonight it will hold sleepers again. Its role shifts, but it remains central, a constant presence in every phase of life here. The door opens wider now. Daylight spills in pale but unmistakable. Cold air follows fresh and sharp. You step closer, drawn by it. Outside waits the wider world, demanding attention, effort, and care. But for a moment longer you remain inside, feeling the Longhouse around you, as it completes its transition from night to day. Sleep has ended, but its effect lingers, carried forward in calm movements and shared purpose. You take another steady breath, then turn fully toward the work ahead, rising with the household, as one ready to step into the day together. As the day unfolds, you notice how the Longhouse breathes differently depending on the season. Even now, with people moving about and light growing stronger, traces of the night remain in the way space is used. In colder months, sleep presses bodies closer together. In warmer times, there is more room to spread out more air between limbs, more drifting during the night. You remember how crowded the bench felt earlier, just how warmth mattered more than comfort. That closeness is not constant throughout the year. When summer comes, when daylight stretches long, and the air stays mild even after sunset, sleep becomes looser. People lie farther apart. Some choose the edges deliberately. Others drift closer to doorways where cooler air moves freely. The Longhouse adapts without complaint. It expands and contracts in use even though its walls do not move. The same space that felt tight in winter feels generous in summer. You sense how that flexibility keeps life manageable. No new buildings are needed, no rearranging of walls, only bodies adjusting to conditions. During busy seasons, more people may sleep here than usual. Extra hands arrive for planting, harvesting, or repair. The bench fills again, straw-pressed thinner furs shared more widely. You imagine nights when space is negotiated more carefully, when someone sleeps closer to the door than they would prefer, accepting a cooler spot in exchange for belonging. Other times the hall feels quieter, fewer bodies, more room to turn over without disturbing anyone. Those nights carry a different kind of rest, deeper in some ways, lonelier in others. Both states are familiar. Neither is treated as permanent. You realize how naturally people here accept these shifts. There's no expectation of consistency. Life moves in cycles and sleep follows along. Crowding is not a failure. Space is not a luxury. Both are temporary conditions shaped by time and need. You think about how children would notice these changes growing up. How winter meant closeness and summer meant freedom. How the body learns to associate certain sensations with certain times of year. Thick air and shared heat for cold months. Lighter sleep and drifting thoughts when nights stay bright. The memory of the night you just passed feels different now in daylight. What felt intimate and enclosing now feels practical, even ordinary. That contrast is part of how the Longhouse works. It feels different depending on what you need from it. You imagine returning here after a long day of work in summer, the sun still hanging low in the sky. The hall would be warmer air moving lazily through open doorways. Sleep would come later, lighter, interrupted by distant sounds from outside. You might wake and not be sure whether it is night or morning yet. In winter, the opposite. Darkness arrives early. The hall fills quickly. Sleep stretches long and deep, broken into segments by the fire and the cold. Time feels thicker, slower shaped by shadows and silence. These seasonal shifts do not require explanation here. They are felt, understood through the body. The Longhouse teaches them quietly year after year. You sense how these patterns shape memory itself. Nights blur together in winter, distinguished by subtle differences in sound and warmth. Summer nights stand out more clearly, each one marked by lingering light and air. The bench you slept on earlier will feel different tonight depending on who returns to it. More bodies, or fewer. Heavier blankets, or lighter ones. The space adjusts again without pause. You realize how much trust is placed in this adaptability. People rely on the Longhouse to meet their needs across changing conditions, and it does not through precision but through tolerance. It allows for variation, for imperfection, for shifting use. That tolerance extends to sleep itself. Rest does not have to be ideal to be enough. Crowded nights and spacious nights both restore what they can. The body learns to take what is offered. As the day moves on, the memory of sleeping here fades into the background, not because it was unimportant, but because it was routine. Night is not a special event. It is a repeated experience shaped slightly differently each time. You carry that understanding with you now. Sleep here is not something you prepare for with elaborate ritual. It is something you enter when conditions allow and leave when light returns. The Longhouse supports it without demanding attention. Later, when night comes again, the hall will rearrange itself once more. People will settle according to season need and habit. The bench will fill differently. The fire will glow differently. The air will feel different. And still sleep will come. You feel a quiet appreciation for that simplicity. No matter how crowded or open the space becomes, the night finds a way to fit inside it. Bodies adapt. Habits adjust. Rest happens. As you move through the day, that knowledge stays with you. Tonight will be different from last night, and that difference will feel normal, expected, and quietly reassuring. As the hours of daylight pass, the memory of the night settles into something softer, less distinct. It does not disappear. It becomes part of the background, like a familiar weight you no longer notice until it is gone. You carry it in the way your body moves, in the steady pace of work, in the ease with which effort rises and falls. Habit does much of the work here. The body remembers where it slept, how it rested, and it responds accordingly. Muscles that were stiff ease more quickly. Movements feel measured rather than rushed. Sleep leaves its imprint even when you're no longer thinking about it. You notice how people rarely speak about the night unless something unusual happened. A disturbance, a bad dream, a sudden storm. Most nights pass without comment. That silence is not forgetfulness. It is familiarity. When something happens every day, it becomes part of life rather than a story. Yet the comfort of sleeping this way runs deeper than routine. It shapes how safety feels. Knowing that rest comes surrounded by others held by warmth and structure changes how the world is faced during waking hours. There is less edge to things, less need to guard every moment. You imagine returning from a journey weary and sore, stepping back into this space at dusk. The sight of the benches, the smell of smoke, the low murmur of voices settling for the night. Relief would arrive before sleep itself, triggered by memory rather than rest. That memory builds slowly night after night. It becomes a reference point. Even away from home you would carry an echo of it. The way a fire sounds when it is safe. The feeling of wool against skin. The rhythm of shared breathing in the dark. You realize how powerful repetition is. One night like this might feel strange, even uncomfortable. Dozens of nights turn it into normality. Hundreds turn it into comfort. Over years it becomes the definition of rest. The Longhouse teaches through experience rather than instruction. It shows how to sleep by making sleep unavoidable, by shaping conditions until the body learns what to do. There's no searching for the perfect position. No expectation of silence. You lie down, you adjust, you rest. Memory and habit blend together here. You do not recall each night separately. They stack layer upon layer until they form a foundation. That foundation supports you through difficulty, through long days, through uncertain seasons. You sense how this kind of rest would feel especially valuable in a demanding life. When work is hard and conditions unpredictable, sleep must be reliable even if it is not luxurious. The Longhouse provides that reliability through consistency rather than comfort. As evening approaches again, the space begins to change once more. Tools are set aside, movements slow, the fire is tended with a familiar hand. The cycle prepares to repeat itself not out of obligation but because it works. You feel a quiet readiness for night returning. Not excitement, not dread, just acceptance. You know what sleep will be like. You know how your body will respond. There are no surprises left to anticipate. That knowledge is its own form of peace. It smooths the edges of thought, reduces uncertainty. When you know where and how you will rest, much else becomes easier to bear. The Longhouse does not promise perfect sleep, it promises dependable sleep. Enough to restore strength, enough to carry on, enough to make the next day possible. As light fades and shadows lengthen, the memory of last night blends with anticipation of the next. They feel almost the same. That sameness is not boredom, it is stability. You move toward evening with that stability inside you, knowing that when darkness comes again, the space will be ready. The bench will be there, the fire will glow, others will settle nearby, and sleep familiar and unremarkable will arrive, once more shaped by habit memory and the quiet reassurance of doing something that has worked for generations. Night returns without ceremony, just as it always does. The light thins again, colours fading from the world until only shapes remain. The Longhouse prepares itself quietly. Movements slow, voices soften. The fire is guided back into its evening rhythm, no longer lively, just present enough to hold the dark at bay. You find your place once more familiar now in a way that surprises you. The bench does not feel strange anymore. Your body knows how to lower itself, how to angle shoulders and knees, how to make room and take only what it needs. Straw settles, wool warms. The space accepts you as easily as it did before. Others settle nearby, repeating the same motions, each one practiced and unremarkable. No one reflects on it aloud. There is no need. The night knows what to do, so do the people inside it. The Longhouse feels smaller again, not because it has changed, but because darkness draws attention inward. Walls hold. The roof disappears into shadow. Firelight gathers everyone into a shared centre. Even those at the edges. Outside fades. Inside becomes enough. You notice how quickly the day loosens its grip. Work, effort, movement all slide away without resistance. The body remembers this place. It recognizes the signals. Rest is permitted here. Your breathing slows. The sounds of the hall settle into their familiar pattern. Nothing new demands attention. Nothing feels unresolved. The night unfolds as it has countless times before, and in the repetition something gentle happens. Sleep is no longer an event, it is a continuation. Another phase of living in this space, no more remarkable than sitting or eating or working. You do not wait for it. You allow it. The fire breathes softly. Bodies grow still. Darkness fills the spaces between thoughts. The Longhouse holds everything without effort. You drift not away from the world, but deeper into it, wrapped in warmth routine, and the quiet certainty that this is how night is meant to feel here. The pace slows now. Thoughts stretch out and soften like embers spreading under ash. There is no reason to hold on to images anymore. No need to follow the thread of the story. The Longhouse fades into sensation rather than detail. Warmth, weight, stillness. Your breathing becomes the only thing that matters. In, out, easy, unforced. The night no longer asks anything of you. It does not require attention or understanding. It simply holds you the way it has held so many before, the way it will hold many again. Sounds blur into a gentle hum. Light fades to nothing behind closed eyes. Even the sense of time loosens, stretching thin and quiet. You're safe here. Resting. Supported. There is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to prepare for. Morning can wait. Let the last edges of awareness soften now. Let the warmth carry you. Let the stillness deepen. Sleep comes naturally when you stop watching for it. And as the Longhouse settles fully into the dark, you drift with it, calm, steady and untroubled,